We're coming to you from the Scripps News Studios in Washington, D.C.
The Race Weekend, Saturday at 9 a.m., 8 Central on Scripps News.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae, along with Kelly Craft, who's filling in for Ted Rollins. Thank you for following along with us as our cameras are in several courtrooms across the country today. We are standing by in South Carolina. The state is planning to rest their case in chief today in the murder trial for William Bud Ackerman. And then we could find out if Bud Ackerman is going to testify. He's accused of killing a man who was dating his soon-to-be ex-wife. And all this by running him over with his pickup truck. He says it was an accident.
Also, we are in Ohio. The defendant in the medical assistant murder trial says he plans to take the stand and testify. Quentin Nixon is accused of shooting Tony Westover. This is a bench trial. Nixon is representing himself. He does claim that he shot and killed Westover in self-defense.
And we're also in Florida. Our new trial is underway, the home renovation murder trial for Corey Benderum. He faces the death penalty if he's convicted of killing Susan Malden. She hired him to come do work inside of her home, and her body was found in a landfill months later.
Also, we are in Tennessee. The son and daughter convicted of murdering their disabled mother. They learned their sentence this afternoon, and we're going to bring you the sentencing hearing for Karen and Michael Murray. That's later on today on Court TV.
For now, let's get you back in for testimony in the bench trial for defendant Quentin Nixon. On the stand is lead investigator Detective Edward Hornacek. He's on cross-examination. The defendant is asking his questions.
Yes.
So is it safe to say that I have my certification as a...
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Okay. On the night of Tony Westover's murder, the 911 caller was advised by dispatch to move the body, correct?
Yes.
Is that legal?
Yes.
I would say. Is it safe to say that that could also contaminate the crime scene?
No.
So if a person is moved from the original position in which they were found, or which they were, which they landed, there will be no way to figure out the original stance they were in, or where they were standing, or where they were at during an altercation, correct?
That's correct.
So Adam Wright testified that his gun was a 9mm Smith & Wesson, correct?
Yes.
Objection. Your Honor, I'm objecting to that line. It's not, he's not impeaching Adam. He's just getting out consistent statements. And he's been doing it for a while with the other ones. I know what he's trying to do when the other people on the stand and he wanted to say something that they said different in their statement. You said, wait till the detective get on. He hasn't been saying what they said different. He's just been steadily getting out consistent statements.
I'm not.
Did Adam Wright testify he had a 9mm gun?
Yes.
Okay. Overruled. Go ahead, Mr. Nixon.
I would ask, detective, I would ask you, how could I have started the fray if I didn't have a weapon?
Objection.
Sustained. Calls for speculation. Secondly, don't answer the question. And thirdly, move on. You don't get to just accuse somebody of perjury without having a legal basis for it. And this is the last bit of legal advice I'm going to give you, or I'm shutting down this cross-examination.
During you testified at a previous hearing. Is it true that you testified at a previous hearing that you marked on a legal warrant the wrong you marked that the warrant was served to the homeowner?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Okay. Was there ever any investigation done on the victim's vehicle?
No.
Was there any prior video of them pulling up in that vehicle?
No.
Were there ever any, can you state for the court how many shells were on the scene of the murder?
2 9mm spent cartridge casings.
And how many live rounds there were?
1 live round in 9mm live round in the kitchen.
Is it safe to say you don't know, seeing as that Adam testified to having a Smith & Wesson 9mm, you don't know if those bullets came from the gun that was used that I said I had or the one he had? Is it safe to say that?
Through your interview and what we talked about, you said you fired it from a gun, and I can't say which gun other than what you said, the gun that was on the table.
No, but I'm asking you, is it safe to say that you don't know if the rounds came from Adam Wright's gun, being that it was a 9mm, or my gun, seeing as there were more than 5 shots, I believe?
Yes, that's correct. We did not have any guns to take to BCI to do any direct comparisons to those shell casings. So we can't determine which gun fired those shots.
But seeing that Adam had a gun on the scene, you didn't think to put a warrant out for his arrest, or you could try to catch him with that gun?
Objection.
Sustained.
Were there any inducements to the witnesses? Did you offer any type of deals for them to come testify against me in these past few days?
I don't think the witnesses had any kind of deals.
The
That were-
question was,
that were offered.
Did you, that's the question, not deals to other people. Did you offer any inducements to any of the lay witnesses that testified during this trial?
There were no deals, and there were no deals offered. I did suggest to Brian Fielders that I would talk to his parole officer in getting him into some type of rehab.
So that would be safe. So is it safe to say that that would be a good reason for him to show up and testify against me?
I don't know the results of any of that, so I can't say that that's safe to say.
Well, you stated earlier he wasn't charged with any felony from this incident, correct?
No, he was not.
Was I, so you stated earlier that when you did the DNA testing on me, my DNA was not on anything you tested, correct?
Through examination through BCI, there wasn't enough evidence to tell whose DNA that was a male was on any other item except for the laser, which was Adam Wright.
And had you got Adam's statement at that time?
No.
So that would, is that safe to say that Adam had the gun on the video that proved it, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Adam, is it true that Brian testified that after he left from the scene of the murder, he hotwired a RV?
I don't recall him saying that he hot-wired an RV.
So during his interview that you interviewed him on, I believe it was (0722), you don't remember him saying that he had to hotwire an RV and get away?
It's in my mind a little bit, but I don't recall the nature of it. I apologize.
All right, moving a bit slowly as a cross-examination from this pro se defendant. Let's bring in our guest this hour to discuss. Someone joining us now in the studio, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Marie Pereira. Marie, when you have a jury, you don't really get to hear anything from them when they're listening to the testimony, but this defendant has heard from this judge, and she sounds like she's about through with some of the things that he is consistently asking. She said, "I'm not giving you any more legal advice." What do you think about the cadence of things right now inside of the courtroom?
She is getting sick and tired of having to be his side counsel. Even though he has one, he needs to be looking in the back of himself and asking for help. He's accusing people of doing
All right,
things.
Marie, actually, we are going to fix a technical difficulty with your microphone. After this break, we will get that analysis from you. Thank you for being with us. You're watching Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, new developments in the murder of Anna Walsh. We're taking a closer look at how Trooper Proctor from the Karen Reed case could play a role in the case against Brian Walsh.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Sarah Boone is charged with second-degree murder after her boyfriend suffocated inside of a suitcase.
Karen, I can't breathe, eh?
I thought he was okay.
The Suitcase Murder Trial. Live coverage starting Monday morning, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on.
Yes, showtime.
You're going to want to see this.
It's on.
Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery. It's on.
Give me something new. I want the real you.
That is the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes, of course we can get you more.
Rex, go! Angus MacGyver.
You know that was fun.
Just give me more.
I didn't hear anybody knock. Shall we proceed?
My boss is the best shot in the whole world. Isn't it exciting?
They call you the rifleman.
Just make it good.
His identity, a mystery.
Who is he?
His sword, lightning fast.
I challenge you!
His name,
Zorro! Zorro!
Zorro. Tuesdays starting 5, 4 Central on Grid Extra.
Did a hog farmer kill his wife with a pitchfork? Todd Mullis claims her death was an accident. But prosecutors say his internet search history tells a different story.
The Corn Rake Murder Trial, weekdays 4 to 8 on Court TV Legendary Trials.
Why is America paying attention to the race? Because what takes place on both sides of the aisle here can be seen on both sides of these aisles.
The Race, weeknights at 6 on Scripps News. Watch with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
Saturday night,
First you moved in, you banned cigar smoke and kitchen nudity.
Oscar Madison,
Just doing my daily yoga.
Felix Unger,
You're not exactly a guy's guy.
Why? Because I use coasters? I'm an accomplished photographer. Perfect, let's start shooting. And I can make a pair of tap shoes talk. What do you say, boys?
together, they're the odd couple.
Here, hold that.
Oscar, is that coffee? I just cleaned the rug.
Better not move.
The Odd Couple, Saturday starting 7, 6 Central on Laugh More.
What drew me to Court TV was this opportunity to combine the two things that I love. When I was in college, I studied television and radio, and then, of course, went to law school. And when I found out that Court TV was going to give me the opportunity to express myself and to share my love of the law, I was sold immediately. The most important issue, innocence or guilt. Started as a production assistant, then AP, and then went up the ranks, and really haven't looked back since.
A masked hero, a faithful sidekick, a trusty steed, and a boundless trail of blazing adventure.
So you're the masked man? I'm afraid so. Coming after you.
Thundering its way into our weekday lineup.
This mask stands for justice. Come on.
The Lone Ranger, Wednesdays on Grid Extra.
We'll be waiting for them.
Television with backbone.
You go get him, Tiger.
Oh, yeah.
murder trial, pro se defendant Quentin Nixon is on trial in Ohio right now. The prosecution in that case, they say that this defendant and the victim were in an apartment with 5 other people who were drinking and taking drugs when Nixon shot the victim in this case, a medical assistant, Tony Westover.
Nixon faces life in prison if convicted. He does plan to testify that the shooting was in self-defense. This is a bench trial, so the judge will end up deciding his fate.
And before we get back into court for more of the cross-examination of the detective, let's bring back in criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Marie Pereira. Marie, the cross-examination seemed to be taking a long time just because of his pauses, not because of all of the information that he's going through. Your thoughts on how that impacts a judge watching this case?
I think it could be very irritating to the judge because she's giving him a lot of leeway, and at this point she's saying, I'm not going to help you try this case. Do your job since you wanted to be your own attorney and do it right. Stop asking people things you have no basis for, just insinuating that the man had some sort of disciplinary action and he acted wrong and he falsified some records when you have no proof the witness did that. Don't ask those kind of questions. And he should really look at his standby counsel and request some assistance if he's not sure. He did make some good points, though, when he pointed out, did you give any of the witnesses any incentives or deals? That part, he did it right, and eventually he did drag it out of the witness that the witness offered to get one of the witnesses who testified against him into a rehab program, which shows possibility for the witnesses' willingness to come and lie on him because he did get some sort of a benefit.
Yeah.
So that part was good.
Great point, Marie, because now they can say that he doesn't have much credibility, that particular witness. So that was a good point that the defendant ended up making. Great insight, Marie. Thank you so much. Let's get you back into court. On the stand is lead investigator, Detective Edward Hornacek. He is on cross-examination by the defendant.
Remind me, Carla, can you clarify that?
So there's something in my brain that says that that might have happened, and I'm recalling a little bit of it, but it's a little cloudy, so I don't remember the context of that conversation to be able to elaborate for you.
Okay, and since it's in your mind a little bit, is it safe to say that with that being in your mind a little bit, wouldn't that be enough to charge somebody with a felony if they had stolen a vehicle?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained. Mr. Nixon, I don't know how many more times I can tell you this. We're not talking about that.
Your Honor, these are all relevant things that happened.
They're not relevant. I ruled they're not relevant. This goes to your claim that you're being prosecuted maliciously. It has nothing to do with the state of the evidence and whether or not you acted in self-defense in the shooting of Tony Westover.
Well, just to clarify, I guess, one more time. During my testimony, I stated I had...
Your testimony or your statement?
My statement. During my statement, I said the gun was on Brian's hip, correct?
Yes.
During my statement, I said I was in fear for my life, correct?
Yes.
During my statement, I stated that I was using meth, correct?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. These were all asked and answered. We saw the video.
Anything else, Mr. Nixon? That hasn't already been asked and answered.
Okay. Was there ever any pictures of the cut on my chest to my leg that you know of?
I just know that our crime scene unit, Detective Teetsy, in the video we just watched after your interview, took photos of your injuries. I don't know. I didn't see him taking your pants off to take any pictures of a cut on your leg, no.
During Ashley Broughton's statement or testimony, do you remember her stating that I was bloody?
Hold on a second. We're talking about bloody on July 22nd and pictures on August 24th. Completely unrelated and irrelevant. Next question.
During or at the scene of the alleged murder, was there any blood anywhere?
Yes.
Had any of my blood or DNA been found in the home or on whatever you guys tested?
None that tested by DNA, no.
So there wasn't any DNA testing done in the home?
Blood swabs were taken of the blood, and that blood came back to Tony Westover.
So is it safe to say that the direction in which Tony, where she was, and that bullet hole facing a whole nother direction, that would indicate that the gun was shot, or a gun was shot, in two different directions?
Objection calls for speculation, Your Honor.
Detective, can you answer that question?
I can say that there were bullet holes found
No,
on...
my question was, can you answer the question based on your education, training, and experience?
No.
Sustained.
I don't have any more questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. No redirect, right?
Yes. You were asked about Brian Fielder's
Ooh, the
and talking to
facial expressions of the judge there. She was
Hoping there's no redirect.
No redirect, and then you just kind of saw her roll her eyes a bit. Marie, let's bring you in here. You know, the defendant, it really does seem, when he was doing that interview with the police, I think that the defendant was thinking they had some sort of audio video of the actual incident that took place inside the home, the shooting. But they don't, and I think he was maybe thinking they did. But you really, and you tell me what you would do as defense counsel. I mean, you can really talk about the other people that were inside the home. You attack their credibility. People were using drugs. There was alcohol. There was so much stuff going on. And so, you know, it's possible somebody else did do the shooting.
It's possible. And to be clear, we're talking about the interview he did without the shirt.
Yes, correct.
That interview was conviction.com. He looked like a meth head.
He did.
And like I said earlier, he looked like an extra from Breaking Bad. He was scratching all parts of his body, his underarm, his leg was shaking. He was cold, but yet, you know, he didn't ask for a blanket. These are all signs of meth head usage, okay? I feel like that interview shows that he was someone who was paranoid, and he could have mistaken that woman for a narc.
Yeah.
And this was not the day of the incident. He had time to hide out, and he had to be captured and all of that. And he was still high. You can look at him and tell that he's still under the influence of some drug, and it just makes it look like common sense evidence that that person in that interview could have murdered the person based on paranoia. He wasn't making any sense in what he said. At some point, he said his head hit the gun. He just was completely confused. He said he felt like he was attacked. He was paranoid. And it hurts him 100% that.
It does, and he is trying his best, it seems. I don't know if this is his best. He could have an attorney. He could use a standby attorney. But I want to go back to a moment that we may have missed because of the commercial break. But he starts confronting this attorney, this detective, rather, in a way to try and establish self-defense. Let's go back.
Have you ever been bitten by a mosquito?
It's going relevance, Your Honor.
Well, overruled. You can ask that question, then we'll see where it goes.
Yes.
And prior to, have you ever had a mosquito flying around your ear?
Yes.
And have you ever visibly seen a mosquito before it bit you, correct?
Yes.
And what was your first reaction?
To swat at the mosquito.
Okay. And if it landed on you, what was your reaction?
I would smack the mosquito.
And is it safe to say that the mosquito would be dead, correct?
More than likely, yes.
Is that human nature, you would think or say?
I would think that that would be a natural reaction.
Okay. So it's a natural reaction to defend yourself from anything that's hurting you, correct?
That as well.
During my interview, you heard me state that I was in fear for my life, correct?
Yes.
Marie, I can't say that he's flying by the seat of his pants because the delivery of that kind of cross-examination does take some preparation.
It does, but again, the video, the before and the after work against him. The man that's sitting there all bearded up and sounding all articulate, we already know that was not the man present in that meth crackhead whatever house he was in. Even though everybody there was on drugs and their testimony is questionable, common sense tells me that it is not crazy to think that that man we're looking at right now, who's completely different from the man in court, could have committed this crime. So when you don't know who to believe, you have a house full of meth heads, you have to look at the one that's before you talking nonsense. This is working against him even with a judge who's looking at the law black and white with no emotion. He has problems. That interview, he can't fix it.
Yeah. Difficult evidence for him.
All right, Marie, thank you so much. We're going to have redirect with the lead investigator when we come back. So we're going to get more testimony from that trial that's taking place in Ohio. Stay with us. You're watching Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
His identity, a mystery.
Who is he?
His sword, lightning fast.
I challenge you!
His name,
Zorro! Zorro!
Zorro! Zorro. Tuesdays starting 5/4 Central on Grid Extra.
Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on.
Yes, showtime.
You're going to want to see this.
It's on. Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery. It's on.
A brilliant law professor gunned down.
In the midst of a bitter custody battle.
Now, the victim's former brother-in-law, a prominent South Florida dentist,
accused of being the mastermind behind the murder.
Florida prosecutors are setting their sights on Charlie Adelson.
3 people have already been convicted for their role in the plot.
Now, will Charlie Adelson's own words come back to haunt him?
The Dentist Mastermind Murder Trial, weekdays 8 to noon on Court TV, Legendary Trials.
Why is America paying attention to the race? Because what takes place on both sides of the aisle here can be seen on both sides of these aisles.
The Race, weeknights at 6 on Scripps News. Watch with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
You go get him, Tiger.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a judge. I loved being on the bench. I want viewers to see that, to know what it's like to love being in a courtroom and to love watching what happens in a courtroom.
This is a case where I think you can believe either side based on the evidence being presented.
Here at Court TV, we can show you everything. And I hope at the end of the day, they've learned a little something about what it takes to try a case and why it's so important that it's done well.
proud to be able to be on the first ever HBCU gymnastics team. This is how we'll do it! To be able to show off my talents at a HBCU is very honoring.
Bounce elevates and celebrates the achievements of HBCUs all year long.
From the classroom to the field, we are making history.
Bounce HBCU Yearbook.
Give me something new. I want the real you. That is the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes, of course we can get you more.
Rex, go!
Angus MacGyver.
You know that was fun. Just give me more.
Oh.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Kelly Craft, in for Ted Rollins, along with Julia Janae.
That's right, and we are going to get you back into that Ohio courtroom where we have been watching testimony in day 3 of the medical assistant murder trial. The defendant is Quentin Nixon, representing himself.
Nixon faces multiple charges, including murder in connection to the 2022 shooting death of Tony Westover. His trial was delayed from March because now Nixon is representing himself.
Let's get you back into the courtroom where we are listening to testimony from lead investigator Edward Hornacek.
Yes. And you were asked about seeing Tony Westover's car pulling up, correct?
Yes.
And that's not on any video, correct?
None that we have on evidence, no.
Correct. So if you did not get that, you would not see it on what you have, correct?
Correct.
Just like Adam coming back, if you did not get that part, you would not see it on what you have, correct?
Correct.
I have no further questions.
You may step down. Do you have any other witnesses? Do you have any other witnesses? You're resting subject to the admission of your evidence?
Correct.
All righty. It is 1:45. We are due to begin our other trial at 1:30, but we are going to go ahead and deal with any motions and exhibits.
Your Honor,
Yes.
I have 2 subpoenas that were sent out in the process of us proceeding through the trial. Detective, I don't know how to pronounce his name, D'Annunzio.
D'Annunzio, I think.
D'Annunzio, and as well as the person who they got the camera from, he lived downstairs.
Okay.
Yeah, I subpoenaed him as well
Right.
to testify on my behalf.
I don't know if I made this clear, I guess. We are not going to proceed for the rest of the day with your case.
Yes, ma'am.
I have another trial to start.
I was just putting it on record.
No, I know. So what my prediction is, though, is the court is closed tomorrow for a court-mandated appearance outside of the courthouse. Monday is my call day.
Yes, ma'am.
Tuesday, we're going to, fingers crossed, finish that other trial. At the earliest we would start is back up is either Wednesday morning or Wednesday afternoon. So you'll have time then. What days did you subpoena them for? Do you know?
So if I may, Judge.
Yes.
So I sent the subpoena yesterday to Detective D'Annunzio once Detective Frost testified.
Okay.
It was actually yesterday afternoon about 5, so the clerk's office was closed. I saw online this morning it was issued. Don't know whether these have been served physically yet or not.
Do you know what day you told them to?
I told them today because I wasn't aware of what time
Well,
they might go.
if either one of them shows up today or tomorrow, I will instruct them to be here at 1 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon.
Okay.
If we don't proceed on Wednesday afternoon, I will give them a standing order to then return whenever we are going to reconvene.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am. When you say if we don't proceed on Wednesday, is that?
Well, it's only if that other trial's not done.
Okay.
And we'll let you know by Tuesday, Mr. Nixon. But Mr. Nixon, the state of Ohio has rested. Do you have any motions to make?
would, the motion, so previously you said that you would take my motion under advisement, but I got a journal entry that said that you had denied it, or, denied it. It was my motion for justified use of force.
It was, what? Say that again.
It was my motion for justifiable use of force.
No, I didn't deny that one. I don't deny those. The statute requires you to put them on notice, that you're asserting self-defense.
Okay.
You have done that.
Okay.
So it's whether or not the evidence bears out that you acted in self-defense, then becomes the decision for the trier of fact.
Okay.
So I did not deny that.
Okay.
What I did take under advisement was the motion to amend the indictment because of the argument that you hadn't been convicted of a felony
Yes,
for
ma'am.
the weapons under disability.
Yes, ma'am.
I no longer have to rule on that because that charge was dismissed.
Okay.
There's and I think that was the only other one. So my other question is, do you have any other motions to make?
Your Honor, I would like to, Your Honor, I would like to assert Rule 29.
Motion for acquittal.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Ms. Easter, go ahead and respond.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, in viewing the evidence in light most favorable to the state, we have put forth sufficient evidence to sustain a verdict of this court.
All right. So, Mr. Nixon, at this time, I have to consider all of the evidence, good, bad, or ugly,
Yes, ma'am.
in favor of the state of Ohio. And I find that they have established the elements of the charges in the indictments, but for count 4, which has previously been dismissed. So at this time, your Rule 29 motion is denied. Let's go through their exhibits. Exhibits 1 and 2 are the 911 calls. Hold on a second.
Where is that list?
All right, so we're going to go through these. If you have an objection, you have to state it, and then I'll roll. Exhibits 1 and 2 are the 911 calls. Any objection, Mr. Nixon?
Pardon me, I'm sorry.
I know. Why are you standing? Do you want to stand? You don't
I've
have.
seen everybody else now.
No, they're.
That was my fault.
Exhibits 1 and 2 are the 911 calls. Any objection? Mr. Nixon?
On both cases?
Oh, you know what? No, this would be on the first one. I apologize. This is regarding the improper handling. So exhibits 1 and 2 are the 911 calls on June 5th, 2022.
So I can object to that. Yes, I object to that.
All right. Over your objection, they're admitted as kept in the ordinary course of business. What's exhibit 3?
It was the third of the 911.
Oh, another 911 call. Same objection?
Same objection, Your
All
Honor.
right, it's admitted over his objection. All right, now we're moving on to the body-worn camera of Officer Costi, and that's 3 and 4. Any objection?
4 and 5.
4 and 5, I'm sorry, thank you.
Exhibit 4.
Let him just
Nothing.
She does it in here. She does it in here.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
4, 5 are admitted. Exhibit 6 is the AK-47. Any objection?
No.
It's admitted over any objection.
Yes, ma'am.
Exhibit 7 is the operability report. Any objection?
No, ma'am.
Exhibits 8 through 30 are all photographs that were identified by Angel McLean. Any objection to 8 through 30?
May I see those? Whatever those exhibits are, 8 through 29?
8 through 30.
Oh, 8 through 30.
We're not starting till 1:30, by the way. I told Ken to. Huh? We will be, very soon. Well, here's what I'm gonna do. You guys, we're gonna adjourn. You all are gonna go through those exhibits. You decide which ones you're objecting to, and when I come back in 10 minutes, you'll have your answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Or you'll have your motions, or your objections.
All right, Her Honor taking a break. Seems like she's a little fed up with how things are moving inside of this courtroom, and they've got some delays ahead before we're going to hear a decision.
She seems even frustrated with whatever they have going on tomorrow. Court mandated. She wanted to make sure.
Yeah, so they'll have to pause this trial. Marie Pereira is still with us. Marie, if he's objecting to these exhibits, it's because he wants to get it on the record, because it sounds like the judge is going to overrule it over his objection and get it all admitted. But is there anything that you see that he could argue on appeal if he is convicted by this judge?
No, because the judge was very fair with him to the point where she had to tell him, I'm not going to tell you how to try this case. And he had standby counsel. And it's very annoying that the standby counsel didn't know a judgment for acquittal is always done after the state rests. So why did he look so confused? What to say now? You guys should have practiced this. And the judge and I have a lot in common. We have the fly pixie thing going on, and we use our eyes, and you know we're mad when we're mad. But I could understand why she's upset. This is stuff that routinely happens. So why are we all acting like we don't know what's going on here?
Yeah, well, I mean, and judges have, you can tell, she has a lot on her plate, large caseload to get through. And the truth is, when you do have a pro se defendant, it makes things move so slowly. And that's why it's a good idea to have representation.
And as soon as you hear his standby counsel start talking, it's like everything, the energy in the room picks up and speeds up, but he is not the one in charge.
All right, coming up, Sarah Boone. We're looking forward to that trial. That's coming up next week. We're going to be heading out there. She's looking to score a major victory before her trial starts on Monday. We'll see what a judge says. Coming up next.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, new developments in the murder of Anna Walsh. We're taking a closer look at how Trooper Proctor from the Karen Reed case could play a role in the case against Brian Walsh. Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV. Sarah Boone is charged with second-degree murder after her boyfriend suffocated inside of a suitcase.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
I thought he was okay.
The Suitcase Murder Trial. Live coverage starting Monday morning, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol Turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
A brilliant law professor gunned down.
In the midst of a bitter custody battle.
Now the victim's former brother-in-law, a prominent South Florida dentist, accused of being the mastermind behind the murder.
Florida prosecutors are setting their sights on Charlie Adelson.
3 people have already been convicted for their role in the plot.
Now, will Charlie Adelson's own words come back to haunt him?
The Dentist Mastermind Murder Trial, weekdays 8 to noon on Court TV, Legendary Trials.
Why is America paying attention to the race? Because what takes place on both sides of the aisle here can be seen on both sides of these aisles.
The Race, weeknights at 6 on Scripps News. Watch with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
Give me something new. I want the real you. That is the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes, of course we can get you more.
Rex, go!
Angus MacGyver.
You know that was fun.
Just give me more.
Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on.
Yes, showtime.
You're going to want to see this.
It's on. Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery. It's on.
1, 2, 3, pull down! I am proud to be able to be on the first ever HBCU gymnastics team. This is how we'll do it! To be able to show off my talents at a HBCU is very honoring.
I didn't hear anybody knock. Shall we proceed?
My boss, the best shot in the whole world. Isn't it exciting?
They call you the rifle man.
Just make it good.
Welcome to the Race Weekend. I'm Joe St. George. It's time for our Inside the Race panel with our partners from Politico. There's a lot to talk about.
It's about reaching the voters.
This is so crucial.
There are a lot of people out there who are still undecided.
These are important issues that are resonating.
You can't just win, you got to win big.
Any given day, anything can change.
Elections are about the future.
We're coming to you from the Scripps News studios in Washington, D.C.
The Race Weekend, Saturday at 9 a.m., 8 Central on Scripps News.
Why is America paying attention to the race?
Because what happens in this town happens to your town too.
Here on the steps of the U.S. Capitol after a
The
historic...
decisions made in this house are felt in the heart of yours.
Every night on the race, we take you to the people, the policies, and the political points of impact.
We want to add some context around it tonight.
The Race, weeknights at 6/5 Central on Scripps News. Watch with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
His identity, a mystery.
Who is he?
His sword, lightning fast.
I challenge you!
His name,
Zorro! Zorro!
Zorro! Zorro. Tuesday starting 5/4 Central on Grid Extra.
At any moment, a Florida judge will issue his ruling about whether Sarah Boone's 2-hour interrogation video from 2020 will be allowed at her trial.
The judge heard arguments yesterday from the defense on this motion to exclude that interrogation. And Boone's attorney, her 9th attorney, he claims that his client was coerced by detectives because she felt she had no choice but to speak to them.
Boone is accused of second-degree murder in the death of George Torres. He was found dead in a suitcase after a night of drinking. Jury selection begins Monday.
Now, yesterday, Boone surprised those of us watching along when she took the stand during that motion hearing and told the judge about that interrogation with police.
Was there any discussion about you being interrogated at the Sheriff's Department?
No.
Was your understanding the sole purpose of you going to the Sheriff's Department the next day was to pick up your phone?
Yes.
And the sole reason for the change in plans from them bringing the phone to you was because Detective Kopsel was pregnant and not feeling well?
Correct. I thought I was supposed to be picking my phone up over at a particular window, and he says, no, your phone is upstairs, so we would just like for you to come upstairs, and that's where you can pick up your phone.
All right. And so did he escort you upstairs?
He did.
Still with us, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Maria Pereira. Okay, Marie, so we're going to find out later on today, or maybe it could be any time, because the judge said he would have the ruling today, whether that interrogation video will be suppressed. I would think that he is not going to suppress that video, but counsel, her defense counsel, made some valid points. He said that the authorities got Sarah down there under false pretenses. Then they didn't read Miranda properly. So his big argument is the totality of the circumstances here.
The fact that they lured her down there under false pretenses, that's really allowed. And the fact that they failed to read that last line which says, do you understand? Looking at the totality of the circumstances, there is not enough there for the judge to toss out and prevent prosecution from using the entire video. The totality of the circumstances also includes the defendant herself, who's been arrested several times. She knows the drill. So I don't think that the judge is going to toss that confession out because of the missing Miranda, those last 2 lines. Do you understand, and do you want to move forward? No.
You know, when people hear Miranda, we think this is a hard and fast rule. We hear it on Law & Order, we hear it on the detective shows, and they think people, A, should know them already, but that it should be easy for police to question them. So let's go back to that moment in the interrogation video when detectives are reading those rights.
Just like we did yesterday. Remember I read you the rights? Your rights? Yeah. So this is the exact same thing, but since I'm asking you follow-up questions, I need to read them to you, okay? Sure. All right. So you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say may be used against you in court. You have the right to talk to a lawyer before and during questioning without charge. If you cannot afford a lawyer and want one, one can be provided for you before questioning without charge. Has anyone threatened you or promised you anything to get you to talk to me?
No.
And do you understand what I just read you?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
She said yes, and she seemed to be in a sound state of mind, Marie. Miranda, though, isn't always just cut and dry. Different jurisdictions sometimes do it differently.
Exactly. As long as the essence and the spirit of the defendant's rights are not violated, and here it wasn't. She said, do you understand? She didn't use the word, do you comprehend, and do you want to move forward? But she said, do you understand? And she sat there and she was giving her story, her one-sided story, which she really thought was going to convince them that she didn't lock that man in the luggage and kill him by suffocation with luggage. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue, was that an essential part of it? So, but yeah, I just do not see this going in their direction at all. So they're going to have to deal with that, Marie, during this trial when it gets started next week. One of the things also that they talked about yesterday, I was kind of chuckling when the judge was talking about her beautification request. And at first it seemed the judge was going to allow some staff members to have her put some makeup on, but then he consulted with DOC, Department of Corrections, and they said that they wouldn't know what was on her face or something, and she couldn't go back to the jail.
Could be contraband.
It could be contraband. But Marie, she obviously wants to look her best for her jury trial.
Of course, she wants to change her appearance, and she wants the glam team, who, by the way, was going to be the staff of the attorney, the paralegal who's now an attorney. So they were just going to pop up in between and fluff her with powder and remove her shine like they do for us. All right, Sarah, sit down. Really? Too much.
I did think that was kind of funny. I got a chuckle. All right, Marie, thank you so much. We are going to turn to South Carolina and the jealous husband murder trial for Bud Ackerman. That's coming up when we come back. You're watching Court TV, your front row seat to justice. Stay with us.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on.
Yes, showtime.
You're going to want to see this.
It's on. Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery.
Wow!
It's on.
I'm Marisa Giorgio, live from our studio in Missoula, Montana, and this is America Tonight.
Scripps News takes you ahead of the headlines.
We're reading between the lines there.
America Tonight on Scripps News. Find with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
Did a hog farmer kill his wife with a pitchfork? Todd Mullis claims her death was an accident. But prosecutors say his internet search history tells a different story.
The Corn Rake Murder Trial, weekdays 4 to 8 on Court TV Legendary Trials.
You go get him, Tiger.
Oh, yeah.
Saturday night. First you moved in, you banned cigar smoke and kitchen nudity. Oscar Madison.
Just doing my daily yoga.
Felix Unger.
You're not exactly a guy's guy.
Why? Because I use coasters? I'm an accomplished photographer. Perfect, let's start shooting. And I can make a pair of tap shoes talk. What do you say, boys?
Together, they're the odd couple.
Here, hold that. Oscar, is that coffee? I just cleaned the rug. Better not move.
The Odd Couple. Saturday starting 7/6 Central on Laugh More.
I didn't hear anybody knock. Shall we proceed?
My boy's the best shot in the whole world. Isn't it exciting?
They call you the rifle man. Just make it good.
His identity, a mystery.
Who is he?
His sword, lightning fast.
I challenge you!
His name,
Zorro! Zorro!
Zorro. Tuesdays starting 5/4 Central on Grid Extra.
What drew me to Court TV was this opportunity to combine the two things that I love. When I was in college, I studied television and radio, and then, of course, went to law school. And when I found out that Court TV was going to give me the opportunity to express myself and to share my love of the law, I was sold immediately. The most important issue, innocence or guilt. Started as a production assistant, then AP, and then went up the ranks, and really haven't looked back since.
You budget. You pay bills.
Yet somehow, women like you, like me,
are 80% more likely than men to live in poverty in retirement.
So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to save ourselves by setting a goal to save 2% more of our income for our retirement.
Why 2?
1% honors you.
And 1% honors all womankind.
So come on.
Learn more about the 2% challenge at WeSaySaveIt.org.
Bounce elevates and celebrates the achievements of HBCUs all year long.
From the classroom to the field, we are making history.
Bounce HBCU Yearbook.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for joining us this afternoon and following along with us as we track several major trials here at Court TV. We're in Ohio, where the state has rested their case in chief in the medical assistant murder trial. The defendant there is Quentin Nixon. He's representing himself at this trial, and he's doing it in front of a judge only. So it's a bench trial, not a jury trial. He's accused of fatally shooting 34-year-old Tony Westover, and he's claiming self-defense. He said that he will take the stand when testimony resumes in his case next week. We're also in South Carolina, where the state's case is winding down in the jealous husband murder trial. Bud Ackerman is accused of fatally striking his estranged wife's new boyfriend with his pickup truck. He says it was an accident. And in Florida, our newest live trial kicked off today with opening statements in the home renovation murder trial. Corey Benderman is accused of killing his client after she threatened to sue him for not completing a bathroom project. And in Tennessee, brother and sister Michael and Karen Murray, they're being sentenced today for the death of their mom, Sheila. Prosecutors successfully argued earlier this year that the siblings neglected their ailing mom, which ultimately resulted in her death in August of 2019. So we'll keep you updated on all of these trials throughout the day. But first, we want to begin in South Carolina for the jealous husband murder trial. Before we get you into court, let's get you caught up on the case. Here's Court TV anchor Ashley Wilcott with more on the case against Bud Ackerman.
May 6, 2023, William Bud Ackerman Jr. is meeting his estranged wife's boyfriend, Kenneth Davis McClendon. In the early morning hours on May 7th at the intersection of Sawgrass Place and Avid Road, Ackerman would strike McClendon with his truck, killing him. Local news station WIFF reported his arrest.
New tonight at 6, a man is facing murder charges after deputies say he intentionally hit another man with his car. The man was taken to a hospital, and that is where he later died.
William Ackerman married Meredith Haney on February 25th of 2012, making their home in Greenwood, South Carolina. The two would have 3 kids, but the marriage would fall apart in May of 2022. About 6 months later, Meredith started seeing Davis McClendon. According to prosecutors, Ackerman found out about the relationship and asked his estranged wife to meet McClendon. The two met at a cul-de-sac in the Greenwood subdivision, Hunters Creek, and around 1:11 a.m. on May 7th of 2023, McClendon was hit by Ackerman's 7,000-pound truck at 25 miles per hour. An hour and a half after the incident, police arrived at Ackerman's parents' house and was arrested for murder. Ackerman and Haney would be divorced 4 weeks later. The prosecution claims Ackerman intentionally killed McClendon because he didn't want him to be with his ex-wife. Ackerman has pleaded not guilty to the murder charge.
And let's go into the courtroom now. The medical examiner is testifying to what they saw on the autopsy of the victim, in this case, Davis McClendon.
And you've just described the body comes and Mr. McClendon came to you. Is this what you're talking about, Doctor?
Yes, that's a picture of one corner of the body transport bag, and it includes a label tag and a seal tag. Those are the yellow tags, and then towards the bottom is a ruler with the name of the decedent as identified to me, and some additional information on that label.
And he's identified here as it shows 3115143. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And did you actually put that in your report before you started examining that that's how he arrived?
Yes.
Under that number?
Yes.
You opened the bag, obviously.
Yes.
Okay. And was there a shoe contained in the bag with him?
There was, yes.
And were there also some pens that Mr. McClendon had?
Yes.
And is that depicted in what's this number? 37 for the record. The previous one. And 26, I apologize. So going back to the pants, number 37, did you observe those when you opened the bag?
Yes.
Containing Mr. McClendon, okay.
Yes, I did. Those had been previously cut and removed. And the image that we see here, just kind of for orientation, you can see towards the left of the image, you can see the belt. That's the waistline. This is actually predominantly the back part of the pants, but because they've been cut, we can see the sides and the front of the pants that have been laid open. But again, just for orientation, we're looking more towards what would be the right buttock area and right hip area currently. I'll just briefly draw your attention to the green-brown grass and dirt stain there for orientation purposes for the next image.
And when Ms. Colon's put the arrow on that, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Okay, what was that again? I'm sorry.
So that's just a grass and dirt stain there. And again, that's mainly for orientation purposes to help with understanding the next image.
Okay, next image. Is this the next image you're talking about?
It is, and we can see up towards the top left of this image, we can see a little bit of that dirt and grass stain. In the center of the image, this is the lower part of the right leg area, right pants leg area. And we can see some black patterned marking on the leg. That would correspond approximately to the inside part of the right leg.
And based on your experience in training, what would that be consistent with?
It's consistent with a tire type of mark. Those marks can have lots of different appearances, but that could be a tire mark.
So, Doctor, we have and that's photo 39 for the record. What number? 39. 39. Now, Doctor, let's, we zip the bag, we get Mr. McClendon out. Do you measure and weigh him?
Yes.
Okay. And what were your findings when you did that?
He was measured at 72.5 inches in length or height and weighed 189 pounds at that time.
And Doctor, I want to do this what's easiest, well, quite frankly for me, but also for you. You testified earlier you do an external exam, correct?
Yes.
And do you document when you're looking at Mr. McClendon everything on the outside? Do you take pictures?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of this jury, on your external exam, is there anything you want to reference before we get specifically to the external evidence of injury?
As part of the external examination, or even before the external examination, we take x-rays. That's one part of the process. And then, again, begin documenting things as I see them.
Okay. And your x-rays in this case, I think we're moving on to the next picture. .625 for the record. What is this an x-ray of?
This is an x-ray of his head, which includes the skull and basically upper part of the neck, or majority of the neck.
And in your report, and I think you've discussed it with everybody, are there some subtle fractures?
There are, and I can try to show those, but it would mean getting a little closer.
Well, I think with the permission,
sure.
Either
you step down, just be sure to speak up loud, and if you have to go to the screen, no problem.
Thank you.
Just be sure to speak up a little louder.
Yes, sir. I think it may be easiest just to go straight to the screen.
If you just keep your voice up, Doctor.
So again, it is quite subtle, but we can see a fracture through part of his jaw here. There's an area of where it's darker. So that line represents a fracture. And then here, as I'm indicating, again, shows an area of darkening right there, which would correspond to the left side of his skull, which shows a fracture as well.
And what can cause that type of injury?
So any kind of significant impact, blunt impact, can cause that.
And looking at his mouth area here, and we're going to get to it in a minute, but was there any damage to Davis McClendon's mouth and/or this area?
The soft tissue, yes, but it's not something that we can see on the x-ray.
Okay. And was his mouth bleeding when you saw it? Was there blood in his mouth area?
There was blood present, yes.
Okay. All right, have a seat back. Thank you. Doctor, how many on your external evidence of injury, external evidence of injury, how many did you find external evidence of injury on Davis McClendon?
So in terms of how I documented it, I basically create a list. And now some of those listed items are actually a series of more than one injury. But on the list in my report, I have 22 separate items under external evidence of injury.
And Doctor, did you also prepare what I call body diagrams?
Yes.
And I want to show you what's marked states 55 and states 56. And did these, do you recognize these, and do they relate to what you're talking about right now?
Yes.
Would these aid you in your testimony?
Yes.
55 and 56 without objection, Your Honor.
Without objection, Mr. Reporter. Okay, 55, 56, and evidence.
Can we start with your external injury?
Sure.
And I would it help to put this on the Elmo now, or you want to go through your?
Personally, I think it's useful to have the visual representation for people.
This is states 55.
And you can go back to the screen if you feel like you need to.
Thank you.
Doctor, you're in control. So starting with your external evidence of injury, could you just start with number one and go?
It would probably be better to go to the other diagram that focuses on the head.
Okay. I apologize. States 56.
So I'm going to go in order of the autopsy report, and then I'll try to reference those as best I can on the diagram as we go along. But we'll basically start with a large laceration, up to 2-inch laceration, with some embedded leafy debris on the back of his head. So that's the right upper corner of the diagram that you're looking at on the screen, right in the middle of the back of his head. The lower part of that skin was undermined or flapped. And basically what that means is that when that injury was incurred, that the head struck something and slid or moved against that in order for that lower part of the skin to be partially pulled away. So that's an impact and sliding motion.
And was there blood? I mean, did you see blood when you examined the external part of his head when
Yes.
you saw that?
Yes.
What the injury you're talking about? Okay.
Yes. And then around that and associated that with that was a little bit of abrasion. A little above and to the left, as you look at that same part of the diagram, was another smaller abrasion on the back of his head. I'll shift now to the front part of his face, which is the upper left of that diagram, where there is a little bit of faint periorbital hemorrhage, which is around the eye. So that's...
Let me stop you. What does that mean?
Periorbital.
Hitting the pause button on this testimony from the medical examiner. We'll get to this break and back in for more in the trial against Bud Ackerman after this.
When they couldn't sufficiently scare him, they killed him.
A young jogger chased and gunned down in South Georgia.
Ahmaud Arbery was hunted down.
Once that video got released to the public, everything changed.
They made their decision to attack Ahmaud Arbery in their driveways.
Should we have been chasing him? I don't know.
victim to verdict with Ted Rollins. All new Sunday night, 8, 7 Central.
Only on Court TV.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol Turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Saturday night. First you moved in, you banned cigar smoke and kitchen nudity. Oscar Madison.
Just doing my daily yoga.
Felix Unger.
You're not exactly a guy's guy.
Why? Because I use coasters? I'm an accomplished photographer. Perfect, let's start shooting. And I can make a pair of tap shoes talk. What do you say, boys?
Together, they're the odd couple.
Here, hold that. Oscar, is that coffee? I just cleaned the rug.
Better not move.
The Odd Couple. Saturday starting 7, 6 Central on Laugh More.
I didn't hear anybody knock. Shall we proceed?
My boss is the best shot in the whole world. Isn't it exciting?
They call you the rifleman. Just make it good.
1, 2, 3, pull down! I am proud to be able to be on the first ever HBCU gymnastics team. This is how we'll do it! To be able to show off my talents at a HBCU is very honoring.
I'm Marisa Giorgio, live from our studio in Missoula, Montana, and this is America Tonight.
Scripps News takes you ahead of the headlines.
We're reading between the lines there.
America Tonight on Scripps News. Find with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
You go get him, Tiger.
Oh, yeah.
Give me something new. I want the real you.
That is the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes, of course we can get you more.
Rex, go!
Angus MacGyver.
You know that was fun.
Just give me more.
Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on.
Yes, showtime.
You're gonna want to see this.
It's on.
Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery. It's on.
Did a hog farmer kill his wife with a pitchfork? Todd Mullis claims her death was an accident. But prosecutors say his internet search history tells a different story.
The Corn Rake Murder Trial, weekdays 4 to 8 on Court TV Legendary Trials.
A masked hero, a faithful sidekick, a trusty steed, and a boundless trail of blazing adventure.
So you're the masked man? I'm afraid so. Coming after you.
Thundering its way into our weekday lineup.
This mask stands for justice. Come on.
The Lone Ranger, Wednesdays on Grit Extra.
We'll be waiting for them.
Television with backbone.
I'm a judge. I loved being on the bench. I want viewers to see that, to know what it's like to love being in a courtroom and to love watching what happens in a courtroom.
This is a case where I think you can believe either side based on the evidence being presented.
Here at Court TV, we can show you everything. And I hope at the end of the day, they've learned a little something about what it takes to try a case and why it's so important that it's done well.
Was it an accident or an intentional collision? We are watching the jealous husband murder trial happening in South Carolina for defendant William Bud Ackerman. He's accused of fatally striking Kenneth McClendon with his truck in the early morning hours of May 7th of 2023. And this was all over anger prosecutors say he had towards McClendon, who had just recently started dating the defendant's estranged wife, Meredith. Let's get you back into court now. The medical examiner is testifying to what the autopsy says about the victim's injuries.
There's some bleeding that's visible there. In this particular case, that is probably a result of blood settling from a skull fracture that's just above the eyes. But we'll talk about the internal fractures a little bit later.
Okay.
Then on the tip of his nose was a approximately 1-inch faint red bruise or contusion. Then we're going to go to the bottom right of the diagram. So extending from his left eye over basically above his left ear is an area of faint red to slightly blue bruising or contusion. It's about a 5 by 2 inch area. On the left cheek on the same diagram is a faint, approximately 3/4 by 1/2 inch, vaguely patterned red bruise, but it's quite faint. It's just a little bit squared off, so there's a little bit of a pattern to it. And then just behind the left ear is an area of contusion or hemorrhage up to about 3 inches. The injury near his eye and above his ear, as well as the injury on his left cheek, are a result of blunt impacts, whereas the hemorrhage behind the ear and below the ear there is most likely a result of, again, settling of blood related to a skull fracture that basically runs in between the ears, and we'll get to the skull fractures in more detail later.
And doctor, you're looking at this with your own eyes, taking pictures, and then you go document it and use a body diagram to help you later, like you're doing now?
Correct.
Okay.
Next, we'll go to the front part of the face again, which is the upper left part of the diagram. What we're going to be looking at his lips. So on the outer aspect of his upper lip was a 1-inch laceration into the soft tissue of the lip. And then on the inside of the upper lip, in the same location, was a corresponding approximately 1-inch laceration. It didn't quite go all the way through, but there's a laceration on both sides there. And then
Did that bleed?
Yes, there was blood around that, yes.
Okay.
On the outer aspect of the lower lip is about a 3/4 inch laceration that went all the way through. It perforated all the way through the lip.
Perforated all the way through the lip?
All the way through the lip.
And I don't want you to touch my lip, but that means it just went all the way through?
All the way through, yes.
Okay.
So you could pinch all the way through. Then below that, on the inside of the mouth, basically the inside of the lip had partially torn away from the chin bone, the mandible. So there was, again, a larger laceration. It's what we call an avulsion, where it partially pulls away from the bone itself.
So that means was the skin separated from the bone?
Basically, yes. The soft tissue, the mucosa on the inside of the mouth, kind of below the gum line, but where it attaches there, it had pulled away from the front part of the chin. There was also a small chip or fracture of one of the upper incisors, the upper teeth. On the front part of the chin itself, there was up to about 1.5 inch faint red bruise. And then if we go to the bottom middle of the diagram, we can see below the chin, sort of under the chin, is an additional about 1.25 inch red bruise. And I think that covers this particular diagram. We'd move to the next diagram.
So we will move to stage 55.
So we'll start pretty much from top down. So near the base of the neck, where the clavicles are, kind of as I'm indicating on myself here on either side, there was...
I don't know if the jury saw that. Your clavicles are where touching you?
Approximately here.
Okay.
There's one on each side.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So there's that little bone right there. There was bruising over each of those locations, up to about 1.5 inch on one side and 1 inch on the other side.
And based on your training and looking at Mr. McClendon, what could have caused that injury?
So when we start talking about how things are caused, it's usually best, instead of looking at individual injuries, to look at the constellation of injuries. So this constellation of injuries, yes, they're blunt, it's blunt trauma, but it's also consistent with the rest of the investigative information that indicates a vehicle being involved. And so we have several injuries to the face and head, to clavicles, and also to the right shoulder, which we'll talk about, that are consistent with a frontal impact, at least to those particular areas. But individually, each of those would be considered a blunt impact.
I won't interrupt you much again, sorry.
Not a problem. Then over the middle of the chest are some small bruises up to about 1 inch. That's the middle part there. On the lower abdomen are up to about ½ inch abrasion with some bruising and an additional very small red abrasion. Then towards the right side of the waistline area, about the top part of the right hip, was a very dark, dry abrasion up to about 1½ inches. Now we're going to go to the back part of the torso, so we just shift over. And we can see on the back, basically from the shoulders all the way down to the upper buttock region, is a very large area of patchy, extensive abrasion. And it is in a pattern that is consistent with what people, what can also be described as road rash. Basically, how this occurs is the entire back part of the body is laying on a flat, rough surface and slides along it, or they slide along each other. So this is a pretty typical finding that we characterize commonly as road rash. Then on the right buttock, there were a couple of excuse me, or a 1½ inch patchy bruise there. And now we'll move to the right shoulder. So we're kind of going back over to the other diagram. So on his right shoulder is a 4 by 1½ inch area of patchy bruising, again from blunt impact. On the front part of the right wrist, so down near the right hand, is an additional bruise across the front of the wrist. And then on the right hand and fingers are several superficial abrasions up to about 1/4 inch. That can occur from.
All right, Dr. Shah, going through all of these injuries. We're hitting the pause button on the testimony to slip in a break, but first let's bring in trial attorney Kelly Hyman, who is here in studio with us. Kelly, this doctor is going through a lot. We know that Davis McClendon was killed by this car. That's not disputed by these two sides, but what is standing out to you that's actually going to help a jury decide, is this intentional or accidental?
Where he was harmed, because that's going to be key in this case, because there's two sides of the story. One, he got out of the car and the defendant rammed right into him, and the other side is the defendant's position of basically that it was an accident, that it was a mistake, that he was already out of the car. And so that is going to be key. Where are the injuries and how it relates to this case? Whether he was right out front of his car, he would have different injuries than potentially he would if it was an accident. So this is something the jury's definitely going to take into consideration in this case.
Yeah, interesting. We're hearing how much of that injury was to his face and to the top of his body, that Ford 250 that the defendant was driving. Not sure if that can be indicated by this forensic pathologist as far as if it was head-on or to the side.
That could potentially. So when you think about it, was the car up so high? Like, did it ram right into him and that's where he got the injuries in the face, or something happened and he turned and that's why he got those types of injuries? But it's definitely important to know about the injuries and where they were and see if that was actually the accident or was it intentional.
Yeah, let's get to that break and get in for more testimony from this medical examiner after this break. break. Stay with us. You're watching Court TV.
Accidents don't just happen 9 to 5, they happen when you least expect them. The team at Brown and Crouppen is here for you 24/7, nights, weekends, every day, every hour. Really here for you. No matter when you call us, you'll speak to a real person and have access to the same expertise and personal attention as always. Get the legal help you need when you need it. Nights, weekends, every day, every hour, 24/7. Seriously injured? Call Brown and Crouppen now.
A brilliant law professor gunned down.
In the midst of a bitter custody battle.
Now the victim's former brother-in-law, a prominent South Florida dentist,
accused of being the mastermind behind the murder.
Florida prosecutors are setting their sights on Charlie Adelson.
3 people have already been convicted for their role in the plot.
Now, will Charlie Adelson's own words come back to haunt him?
The Dentist Mastermind Murder Trial, weekdays 8 to noon on Court TV, Legendary Trials.
Give me something new. I want the real you.
That is the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes, of course we can get you more.
Rex, go! Angus MacGyver.
You know that was fun.
Just give me more.
I didn't hear anybody knock. Shall we proceed?
My boss is the best shot in the whole world. Isn't it exciting?
They call you the rifleman. Just make it good.
Bounce elevates and celebrates the achievements of HBCUs all year long.
From the classroom to the field, we are making history.
Bounce HBCU Yearbook.
1, 2, 3, pull down! I am proud to be able to be on the first ever HBCU gymnastics team. This is how we'll do it! To be able to show off my talents at a HBCU is very honoring.
I'm Marisa Giorgio, live from our studio in Missoula, Montana, and this is America Tonight.
Scripps News takes you ahead of the headlines.
We're reading between the lines there.
America Tonight on Scripps News. Find with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
You go get him, Tiger. Oh, yeah.
I'm a judge. I loved being on the bench. I want viewers to see that, to know what it's like to love being in a courtroom and to love watching what happens in a courtroom. This is a case where I think you can believe either side based on the evidence being presented. Here at Court TV, we can show you everything. And I hope at the end of the day, they've learned a little something about what it takes to try a case and why it's so important that it's done well.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. Thank you for being with us. We are bringing you the case of the state of South Carolina versus William Bud Ackerman this afternoon. Now, prosecutors in that case say that Ackerman was driving his Ford 250 and he ran into his wife's new boyfriend, his soon-to-be ex-wife's new boyfriend. This happened last year. The defense claims that this was all an accident and it was fueled by the victim, Davis McClendon's desire to fight the defendant. They were meeting up to discuss why he was dating the defendant's soon-to-be ex-wife. We are hearing from the medical examiner who performed the victim's autopsy in this case. Let's pick it up right where we left off.
Basically striking rough ground and partially being dragged across rough ground. On the left hand are 3 very tiny punctate. When I say punctate, I just mean that it's very tiny, like the tip of a pen or pencil, abrasions. Again, likely from similar kinds of impact or slight scraping against rough material. There was palpable fracture of the right femur. So the femur is the large bone between the hip and the knee. So his right thigh bone had been broken. That was located approximately 26 inches above the heel. The area of fracture was approximately 26 inches above his heel. On the outside of the lower right thigh, and extending below the right knee to the outside of the right leg, and so that's on the left side of this diagram, is a large area of faint red bruising and some patchy abrasion. And then on the inside of the right leg, so if we move a little bit over on the diagram to see the other part of yeah, just like that. So on the part of the diagram on the right is his back, so the right side is the right leg, whereas on the left side of the diagram, the left side is the right leg because he's facing us. So corresponding on the inside of the lower right thigh to beyond the knee to the right leg area below the knee is an additional area, fairly large area of dry abrasion and some bruising. Those two areas together could have occurred as part of the same process, basically with something pressing on the inside of the leg and creating an injury there, which then compressed the outside of the leg against an additional surface, which produced injury on the outside. So you have approximately corresponding injury on the inside and the outside. The inside injury would approximately correspond to the black mark that we saw on the clothing if the clothing was being worn normally.
And would that be consistent with the tire on a vehicle?
Yes. And then looking at the left thigh, so we have to go up just a little bit on the diagram. There we go, towards the top left part of the diagram, we see 2 parallel marks on his left thigh. That was about 28 inches above the heel, and that's an area of bruising with a focal area that has a little bit of a horizontal pattern that we see on that part of the diagram. That's, again, about 28 and a half inches above his heel. Correct. And then elsewhere on his right leg was a 3.5 inch abrasion. On the inside of his left ankle was a faint bruise, and on the back of his left ankle is a very small abrasion.
The injury here, is that consistent with anything in this case based on your examination?
It's about context, but in this context, especially given that the right femur is fractured close to the same level, the right femur is fractured approximately 26 inches above the heel, and this faintly patterned injury on the left is about 28 and a half inches, so 2.5 inches difference, which is, you can shift your hips and basically create that much difference. It's again consistent with a very significant impact that broke one side and just caused some bruising on the other side. It's certainly not an unusual injury pattern or injury constellation related to a vehicle impact. And I think that covers the external evidence of injury as I have it.
And I want to stop you, and if we've shown it, I apologize to everybody. You just talked about the femur injury. This is This is 228. Is that the injury you talked about, the femur?
Yes, so that's a pretty obvious fracture of the right femur. That's an X-ray, an X-ray of a pretty obvious fracture of the right femur.
And what I went up and pointed to a minute ago was what you were talking about corresponding with that on the other leg?
Yes.
The injury?
Yes, so the right side had the fracture, the left side had the bruising that was visible on the skin surface.
Okay, we'll get back. I checked off 22 on your report, external evidence of injury. Do you disagree with that?
Pardon?
Your external injury, have you gone through?
I believe I have. I believe I mentioned that as well.
Yes, sir. That's what I was.
Yeah.
Okay, Dr. Kyle Shaw. After you examined Davis McClendon's exterior, what do you do next? Generally, what did you do next with his body?
So then once we've gathered everything that we needed to from the external and taken our photographs and all those kinds of things and move on to the internal part of the examination.
Okay.
And then document from there.
Okay. And I'm looking at your report, which the defense has, page 4 of 7. Can you start with the internal evidence of injury that you, Dr. Kyle Shaw, found inside Davis McClendon?
Sure. And again, we'd go mostly from the top down. So,
I don't mean, but are you opening his body or looking inside?
Yes.
I don't mean to say, okay.
Yes. So there's a large incision that is made basically from the shoulders to the middle of the chest. And then that incision goes down to basically the pelvis. And we open the body up and look at the internal organs. For the head, there's an incision that is made across the top of the head, and the scalp is reflected front and back, so we can see the outside part of the skull as well as the underside of the scalp. And then part of the top of the skull is removed in order to be able to examine the brain and the inside part of the skull, what we call the base of the skull. So yes, all of those organs and tissues are normally examined.
And you really, that's the only way to do it, isn't it?
It is.
Okay. And you actually literally open him up and look at his brain and start going down?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's start with number 1.
So again, going in order of the autopsy report, his scalp was reflected and showed about a 3-inch hemorrhage beneath the scalp on the left side of his head, approximately underlying the area of bruising that was beside his eye and above his ear. There was also about a 4-inch area of hemorrhage on the back of his head associated with the large laceration right on the back of his head. There was a small amount of what we call subdural blood smearing. So just for explanatory purposes, inside the skull, we have different areas that we describe bleeding. So subdural bleeding is blood that is loose on the outer surface of the brain. So it's between the skull and the brain. It can be fluid blood that kind of moves around on the surface of the brain.
And what causes that?
In this case, that's secondary to blunt trauma. There can be other causes, but in this case, it's blunt trauma. There was additional what we call subarachnoid hemorrhage, and the difference between subdural and subarachnoid hemorrhage is that the subarachnoid hemorrhage is stuck to the surface of the brain. There's basically a fine membrane that sits on the surface of the brain, and that bleeding is just below that membrane, but we can see it.
And again, that could be caused by?
Blunt trauma.
Okay.
So there was fairly patchy, extensive, what we call, again, subarachnoid hemorrhage on the surfaces of the brain in several locations on the brain. That's related to, some of it's related to fractures of the brain where the bone itself impacts the brain.
This is just heartbreaking to hear about how Davis McClendon died that day, being hit by this Ford 250 driven by the defendant. But the real question for this jury, was this malicious, was this intentional, or was this an accident there in the street? We're going to get to a break, and we'll get you back in for more testimony in the case against Bud Ackerman.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, new developments in the murder of Anna Walsh. We're taking a closer look at how Trooper Proctor from the Karen Reed case could play a role in the case against Brian Walsh.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Sarah Boone is charged with second-degree murder after her boyfriend suffocated inside of a suitcase.
Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
I thought he was okay.
The Suitcase Murder Trial. Live coverage starting Monday morning, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
A brilliant law professor gunned down.
In the midst of a bitter custody battle.
Now the victim's former brother-in-law, a prominent South Florida dentist,
Accused of being the mastermind behind the murder.
Florida prosecutors are setting their sights on Charlie Adelson.
3 people have already been convicted for their role in the plot.
Now, will Charlie Adelson's own words come back to haunt him?
The Dentist Mastermind Murder Trial, weekdays 8 to noon on Court TV, Legendary Trials.
1, 2, 3, pull down! I am proud to be able to be on the first ever HBCU gymnastics team. This is how we'll do it! To be able to show off my talents at a HBCU is very honoring.
Give me something new. I want the real you.
That is the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes, of course we can get you more.
Rex, go! Angus MacGyver.
You know that was fun.
Just give me more.
Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on.
Yes, showtime.
You're gonna want to see this.
It's on.
Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery. It's on.
His identity, a mystery.
Who is he?
His sword, lightning fast.
I challenge you!
His name,
Zorro! Zorro!
Zorro. Tuesdays starting 5, 4 Central on Grid Extra.
Welcome to the race weekend. I'm Joe St. George. It's time for our Inside the Race panel with our partners from Politico. There's a lot to talk about.
It's about reaching the voters.
This is so crucial.
There are a lot of people out there who are still undecided.
These are important issues that are resonating.
You can't just win, you gotta win big.
Any given day, anything can change.
Elections are about the future.
We're coming to you from the Scripps News studios in Washington, D.C.
The Race Weekend, Saturday at 9 a.m., 8 Central on Scripps News.
A masked hero, a faithful sidekick, a trusty steed,
Silver!
and a boundless trail of blazing adventure.
So you're the masked man? I'm afraid so. Coming after you.
Thundering its way into our weekday lineup.
This mask stands for justice. Come on.
The Lone Ranger, Wednesdays on Grid Extra.
We'll be waiting for them.
Television with backbone.
I'm Marisa Giorgio, live from our studio in Missoula, Montana, and this is America Tonight.
Scripps News takes you ahead of the headlines.
We're reading between the lines there.
America Tonight on Scripps News. Find with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
I didn't hear anybody knock. Shall we proceed?
My boy's the best shot in the whole world. Isn't it exciting?
They call you the rifleman. Just make it good.
Welcome back. Let's get you back inside of the South Carolina courtroom we are watching in the case against Bud Ackerman. This case is winding down. We're getting close to hearing whether the jury is going to believe the prosecution that he intentionally drove his truck into his estranged wife's new boyfriend, or if they side with the defense, who claims that this was all an accident. And we're hearing from an important witness. A medical examiner is on the stand testifying about the injuries that the victim, Davis McClendon, sustained during that crash. Let's go in for more.
And so there could be different areas of the brain that get injured. There were some very minimal areas of bruising, we call cortical contusions, but it's bruising in the substance of the brain itself. They were not extensive, but they were noticeable. That included the underside the frontal lobe, as well as on the outside of the left temporal lobe, again, approximately where I'm indicating on myself. And there was tearing or laceration of part of the brain called the cerebellum in the back part of the head, again, roughly as I'm indicating on myself, back here.
Now, Doc, you love your job, don't you?
Yes.
What's cortical mean?
Cortical basically means surface. In this context, we talk about the cortex of the brain. We're talking about the tissue around the outer surface of the brain.
Okay.
There were some additional small hemorrhages in the brainstem and extending to the basal ganglia above the brainstem. Again, just small areas of bruising or hemorrhage inside the substance of the brain itself. There was additionally bleeding, what we call intraventricular hemorrhage. So that's bleeding within some of the normal cavities inside the brain. So there's normal spaces that are inside the brain, and there was blood in those.
Number 7.
There were fractures of what we call, and I'll explain this a little bit more after I mention it, fractures of the anterior fossa, a middle hinge fracture, this is all part of the skull, a middle hinge fracture, a fracture through the back part of the skull, additional fractures on the left side of the base of the skull, and again, another fracture towards the back. So what we call the anterior fossa of the base of skull is that part of the skull that sits right above the eyes. That part of the bone of the skull is extremely thin, and it's very common for it to fracture even if there's an impact to the back of the head. That bone just above the eyes can actually fracture. What we call a middle hinge fracture is when the base of skull, basically between the ears, fractures, and so that part of the skull can rotate like a hinge because it's broken. And there were some additional fractures. The one substantial fracture was through the back part of the calvarium, back part of the skull, that went all the way down to where the brainstem connects to the spinal cord. So very severe, significant skull fractures.
And what could have caused that?
That would be very substantial blunt impact.
Okay.
Possibly more than one impact. So there could be an impact. We can see bruising under the scalp on the left side of the head, so that's one significant area of impact. We can see injury to the front part of the mouth, which is another area of impact, and we have a very large laceration to the back of the head, which is a significant area of impact. So there's an impact here, there's an impact here. That could be part of the same process, impacting here and then sliding sideways. And then, of course, the one to the back of the head, which had some leafy soil-type debris in it, which is consistent with impacting the ground and sliding across the ground. Again, moving down in the internal evidence of injury section, there were some hemorrhages in the tongue, 3 hemorrhages across the tongue.
What does that mean? So
So there's hemorrhage or bruising within the tongue itself. That could be related to impacts that occurred to the front part of the mouth, with part of the tongue being injured as part of that process. That would be the likely explanation.
Okay.
There was additional hemorrhage just left of the cervical spine, which is the neck part of the vertebrae, the neck part of the spine. That hemorrhage basically went from the left side of the neck all the way across the front part of the neck. There was some partial separation of what's called the hyoid bone, which is up here in the upper part of the neck, and there was fracture of the larynx as well as part of this whole process. So the larynx is kind of the voice box in the front part of the neck.
So there's a fracture of that?
Yes, so the larynx is made out of cartilage, so it's a little bit flexible, but it can fracture as well. If it's bent far enough, it will still fracture. That hemorrhage basically extended all the way down to the level of the clavicles.
All right, we're hitting the pause button on this testimony. We're going to bring in trial attorney Kelly Hyman to get some analysis on this case in general. Kelly, this is the jealous husband murder trial. Bud Ackerman is accused of meeting up at 1:30 a.m. with the victim and something going very terrible, this fatal collision. He says he didn't mean to, that the guy was standing in the middle of the road. Prosecution says no, this guy had just gotten out of his vehicle when he was plowed down by this Ford F-250. Your thoughts on whether or not, when the defense takes this case, that he has to take the stand?
In this case, what someone thinks happened is definitely going to be key, and that's ultimately up to the jury. Now, in the court of law, you're innocent until proven guilty, so the defense doesn't have to take the stand. He can talk to his counsel, and the counsel could say, yes, I really think you need to take the witness stand to tell your side of the story. However, ultimately, it's going to be their decision. But it's also important to remember, if he does tell his side of the story, then the state can come back and help use some of the evidence that they have already used to say, no, this is not the case. We have this evidence that shows that the victim just got out of the car. How do you explain this? How do you explain? So it opens up potentially a Pandora's box for him if he takes a witness stand.
Yeah, the defense is trying to argue mutual combat almost, that the victim wanted to fight, and perhaps they'll try to use what came out from the ex-wife. She wasn't the ex-wife yet, about 4 weeks before their divorce. But these men agreed to come talk. I mean, what do you think they thought was going to happen?
Well, what was the defendant's intent? And I think that's going to be key in this case, to see what was his state of mind and what was the intent. Did he have the intent, as the state says, to hit him, or did he have the intent not, and it was an accident?
Yeah, we'll see how the jury decides on this when they get this case. We're getting close. We're wrapping up the state's case. We have more testimony ahead in the jealous husband murder trial for Bud Ackerman. Stay with us.
I didn't hear anybody knock. Shall we proceed?
My boy's the best shot in the whole world. Isn't it exciting?
They call you the rifleman.
Just make it good.
Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on. Yes, showtime.
You're going to want to see this.
It's on.
Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery. It's on.
1, 2, 3, pull down! I am proud to be able to be on the first ever HBCU gymnastics team. This is how we'll do it! To be able to show off my talents at a HBCU is very honoring.
Did a hog farmer kill his wife with a pitchfork? Todd Mullis claims her death was an accident. But prosecutors say his internet search history tells a different story.
The Corn Rake Murder Trial, weekdays 4 to 8 on Court TV Legendary Trials.
Bounce elevates and celebrates the achievements of HBCUs all year long.
From the classroom to the field, we are making history.
Bounce HBCU Yearbook.
You got us banned from being room parents? I have never been more in love with you.
Who wants to go nuts for donuts?
Show him your folding trick.
I'm not in the mood for your sheet right now.
That's gotta hurt, huh?
You keep me coming back for more.
I'm a judge. I loved being on the bench. I want viewers to see that, to know what it's like to love being in a courtroom and to love watching what happens in a courtroom.
This is a case where I think you can believe either side based on the evidence being presented.
Here at Court TV, we can show you everything. And I hope at the end of the day, they've learned a little something about what it takes to try a case and why it's so important that it's done well.
A masked hero, a faithful sidekick, a trusty steed,
Silver!
and a boundless trail of blazing adventure.
So you're the masked man? I'm afraid so. Coming after you.
Thundering its way into our weekday lineup.
This mask stands for justice. Come on.
The Lone Ranger. Wednesdays on Grit Extra.
We'll be waiting for them.
Television with backbone.
Give me something new. I want the real you.
That is the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes, of course we can get you more. Rex, go!
Angus MacGyver.
You know that was fun.
Just give me more.
His identity, a mystery.
Who is he?
His sword, lightning fast.
I challenge you!
His name,
Zorro! Zorro!
Zorro. Tuesdays starting 5/4 Central on Grid Extra.
Or visit trusthartford.com. The Bucks got your back.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott. Of course, honored to be with you today. We're in several courtrooms across the country this afternoon here at Court TV. In South Carolina, defendant William Bud Ackerman is accused of fatally striking Kenneth Davis McClendon with his car in the early morning hours of May 7th, 2023. McClendon had recently begun dating Ackerman's soon-to-be ex-wife, and the two men had agreed to meet up and talk when McClendon was struck by that truck. And in Florida, our newest live trial kicked off today with opening statements in the home renovation murder trial. Corey Benderman is accused of killing his client after she threatened to sue him for his not completing a bathroom project. We'll bring you updates from that trial throughout the day today. But for now, let's head back to South Carolina, a really compelling trial, rather. The medical examiner is testifying to the victim, Davis McClendon's injuries. This is direct examination by the state.
Taking off 11, number 12.
I looked at the back part of the neck, again, for additional injuries. So that's a little bit of an additional examination to see if there was a more obvious injury to the back part of the neck. There was hemorrhage that extended from the laceration all the way down to the upper part of the back of the neck, but I did not find a neck fracture. There was a very small amount of blood in each chest cavity, so about 50 milliliters on the right and 25 on the left. It's a very small amount, which is probably just coming down from the upper injuries in the neck. It can kind of ooze down and get in there. I did some additional examination of the lower extremities because of the external injuries that we saw, and anytime that there is a well, in certain pedestrian type cases, I'll do what we call cut downs of the extremities. And there was some hemorrhage related to or around the area of the right femur fracture. And then extending down to around the knee and roughly the area of abrasion that we saw and described on the right leg.
Well, what did that tell you as a forensic pathologist, those injuries?
It basically just supports what we already saw in the external exam. But part of the reason we do that internally is that occasionally we have cases where we don't see very much on the outside, but when we do these, what we call cut downs into the subcutaneous tissues, sometimes there's fairly substantial injury. It just doesn't, because it doesn't involve bone, we don't always see it on the x-ray, and because it doesn't visually involve skin, we don't always see it during the external exam. So in certain cases, but not all cases, we do that additional, or I would do that additional examination.
This may be a terrible question, but so your internal injuries were consistent with the external?
Yes.
Basically?
Yes.
Okay. After you've completed internal exam, and that I counted 22 external evidence of injury and 14 internal evidence of injury. Do you disagree with that?
That's how I have it documented. Again, within each line, that's sort of, those numbers are related to lines of descriptions. So within those lines, sometimes there's 2 or 3 or more individual injuries. So it's kind of a reference point, but yes, 20, I believe you said 22, and I'm looking at my report, 22 and 14, correct.
And you, once you got through, and you kind of went through his whole body.
Yes.
What do you do next? You gather any blood, or what do you do?
As part of the internal examination, we do collect specimens. It's usually with various fluid specimens. So it's usually, if we can get it, fluid from the eye, urine, and blood. For various purposes, but primarily for toxicology purposes or potential toxicology analysis.
And are you familiar with the toxicology results in this case?
I have seen it, yes.
And what were was it a .11, basically the toxicology?
That's my recollection. I do not have that report in front of me, however.
I think we both reviewed this with you earlier, correct? I mean, everybody's seen it. Your Honor, I don't think there's any objection to you, Hannon, just referring to that. Is that the toxicology report?
Yes, it is. So this is a toxicology report issued by the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, or SLED, and they perform a lot of the postmortem toxicology for us.
So fluids come from, it's not unusual to come from the autopsy to SLED.
Correct.
Okay. And one of those findings was a .11 in Davis McClendon as far as alcohol, correct?
Basically, yes. So there's some of the ocular fluid, or the fluid that was taken from the eye, was analyzed. The ethanol or alcohol result from that was .118. And then it was also performed in blood that was taken, and that was reported as .110.
In addition to that, was there evidence of some prescribed Adderall in there?
Yes, so that gets reported as what's called amphetamine. That's not the same as methamphetamine. Methamphetamine can turn into amphetamine, but normally we see them both together. In this case, there was just amphetamine, and that's consistent with a reported history of attention deficit disorder, which can be treated by something called Adderall or similar medications, which in toxicology we see as amphetamine. The level that's reported here is 120 nanograms per milliliter, and to the best of my understanding, that would be within prescribed ranges.
Okay. Now, Doctor, going back to the injuries you've described, how many autopsies have you performed on vehicle pedestrians that you knew were a vehicle pedestrian? Is that a fair question?
Sure. So just on pedestrians, although I haven't calculated that number, I don't know precisely, I would estimate in the neighborhood of 100 or so.
And you've described the injuries to Mr. Clendon's mouth, this area. And have you seen the picture of the Ford F-250?
I have, yes.
Okay, and I think it's 49, but as Miss Danielle Cologne is pulling that up, if I misspoke, this is Exhibit 18. Photo 814 on Exhibit 18 for the record.
Okay.
Sorry. And Doctor, can you see that?
Yes.
And you've seen this before?
Maybe not a specific picture, but a similar picture of a little bit wider view, but I recognize the damage.
And based on your examination of Davis McClendon and looking at this truck, are those injuries on Davis McClendon consistent with the injury to this truck? Because this truck will cause those injuries to his face.
Yes, I think so.
And the injuries, did the femur that's broken and the other injury with the 2 parallel lines I pointed out up there, how could those injuries been received in this case, based on your training and observation of Davis and the evidence?
So typically, when there's a leg fracture, it's usually related to a bumper or something that's protruding slightly from the vehicle. There can be other explanations, but that's the typical way that occurs.
And these injuries, I think you testified, were pretty close inch-wise.
Pretty close in height in terms of distance from his heel, which is an estimate or an approximation of standing position.
And you described an injury to the back of Mr. McClendon's head, the trauma to the back.
Yes.
Were you aware that where he landed? Have you seen those pictures?
I have seen photos.
Okay. And are the injuries on the back of his head consistent with where he would have landed?
Yes.
Okay. Did these injuries did it knock him out? Did he go unconscious?
So with the injuries that involve his skull, with the multiple skull fractures and severe fractures, I think most likely upon receiving those injuries, he probably would have lost. I would be surprised if he did not lose consciousness.
Okay. So in your opinion as a forensic pathologist, would he have been able to speak after these?
I'm sorry.
Would he have been able to speak after receiving these injuries? Speak.
In my opinion, no, not likely.
And his ultimate demise would have been how long?
Hard to know for sure, but these injuries are significant and severe. The injury to his head is likely to have impacted his ability to breathe. So loss of consciousness and then loss of control, even subconscious control of vital functions such as breathing would be reasonably likely. So death could occur anywhere from a few minutes later to potentially hours later, but more likely on the order of minutes, depending on how badly he lost function. And I don't have a clear way of knowing that for certain.
Would he have been able to get up and fight?
No.
Would he have been able to get up and fight?
No, not in my opinion.
Sure.
Would you please tell the ladies and gentlemen of this jury, Dr. Kyle Shaw, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as to the cause of death of Davis McClendon?
Yes. My opinion of cause of death is multiple blunt force injuries due to pedestrian struck by motor vehicle.
That's all we have. Thank you, Your Honor.
Mr. Swirling, any cross-examination?
Yes, sir, just brief. Can you indulge me one moment?
Sure.
Doctor, there really is no dispute about the fact that
And before we head to break, we want to remind you of two big trials beginning next week. First in Georgia, the wife of a prominent attorney will be heading to trial on Monday for the death of her husband. Melanie Ferris is accused of shooting her husband, Gary Ferris, inside their home and then burning his body. And in Florida, the long-awaited, this is going to deliver defendant Sarah Boone. Her trial starts on Monday with jury selection. Of course, she's the one accused of zipping up her boyfriend in a suitcase and then leaving him there to die, all while filming the entire ordeal on her phone. That video is part of this trial. We'll have both of these trials starting Monday right here on Court TV Live. In the meantime, stay tuned. We'll be right back after this short break.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, new developments in the murder of Anna Walsh. We're taking a closer look at how Trooper Proctor from the Karen Reed case could play a role in the case against Brian Walsh.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Sarah Boone is charged with second-degree murder after her boyfriend suffocated inside of a suitcase.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
I thought he was okay.
The Suitcase Murder Trial. Live coverage starting Monday morning, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on.
Yes, showtime.
You're gonna want to see this.
It's on. Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery. It's on.
Bounce elevates and celebrates the achievements of HBCUs all year long.
From the classroom to the field, we are making history.
Bounce HBCU Yearbook.
Did a hog farmer kill his wife with a pitchfork? Todd Mullis claims her death was an accident. But prosecutors say his internet search history tells a different story.
The Corn Rake Murder Trial, weekdays 4 to 8 on Court TV.
1, 2, 3, Bulldogs! I am proud to be able to be on the first ever HBCU gymnastics team. This is how to be able to show off my talents at a HBCU is very honoring.
Why is America paying attention to the race? Because what takes place on both sides of the aisle here can be seen on both sides of these aisles.
The Race, weeknights at 6 on Scripps News. Watch with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
Welcome to the Race Weekend. I'm Joe St. George. It's time for our Inside the Race panel with our partners from Politico. There's a lot to talk about.
It's about reaching the voters.
This is so crucial.
There are a lot of people out there who are still undecided.
These are important issues that are resonating. You can't just win, you gotta win big.
Any given day, anything can change.
Elections are about the future.
We're coming to you from the Scripps News studios in Washington, D.C.
The Race Weekend, Saturday at 9 a.m., 8 Central on Scripps News.
His identity, a mystery.
Who is he?
His sword, lightning fast.
I challenge you!
His name,
Zorro! Zorro! Zorro!
Zorro. Tuesdays starting 5, 4 Central on Grid Extra.
I didn't hear anybody knock. Shall we proceed?
My boss is the best shot in the whole world. Isn't it exciting?
They call you the rifleman.
Just make it good.
Why is America paying attention to the race?
Because what happens in this town happens to your town too.
Here on the steps of the U.S. Capitol after a
The
historic...
decisions made in this house are felt in the heart of yours.
Every night on the race, we take you to the people, the policies, and the political points of impact.
We want to add some context around it tonight.
The Race, weeknights at 6, 5 Central on Scripps News. Watch with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
You go get him, Tiger.
Oh, yeah.
Before we get back into court, we have a quick update out of Tennessee, where 2 siblings convicted in their mom's death were sentenced to life in prison today. Both Karen and Michael Murray were found guilty back in June of first-degree murder and aggravated neglect of their 68-year-old mother, Sheila Murray. Sheila died from complications at the hospital in 2019 after paramedics found her at home covered in fecal matter and with a bone sticking out of her leg. Today, the judge heard from both the defense and the state before handing down the sentence. Let's take a listen.
These are poor people that were put in the worst circumstances, something that they were completely unqualified to handle. Their mother gets sick in a way they think they can handle. Clearly, things got beyond their ability to do so.
Throughout the trial, there was this notation that somehow because people are poor, they don't know how to take care of family members. I think that does a disservice to people that somehow because they're poor, they can't take care of people when every day, all across the world, people who are poor and impoverished are taking care of people, how people should be treated. And to not know that there is an infection, a huge infection, that is rotting through their mother's back, if they are taking care of her and cleaning her like they say they are, there's no way you miss that and don't know that she needs medical attention. By their own testimony, they had phones and stuff. They could access the outside world. They could have called 911. They could have done anything, but they chose not to. The defense says that this is a unique set of circumstances. No, it's not.
Extremely tragic case. Ms. Sheila Murray should have been cared for in a setting with medical professionals, and Mr. and Ms. Murray should be living their lives. As Karen Murray said, they have their own lives to live. Regrettably, both of you will be living the rest of your lives absent any action on the deal in custody of the Department of Corrections. And you are therefore sentenced, each of you, to a life sentence.
We'll have full highlights from Karen and Michael Murray's sentencing coming up later this evening. Now let's turn back to South Carolina for the jealous husband murder trial. Defendant William Bud Ackerman is accused of striking and killing the boyfriend of his estranged wife with his pickup truck. Kenneth Davis McClendon was found deceased outside of his vehicle at an intersection at approximately 1:30 a.m. back in May of last year. Over the course of their investigations, detectives say they determined that the crash that killed McClendon was intentional and that Ackerman had used his truck to hit the victim. Before we head back into court, I want to bring in our guest this hour, trial attorney Kelly Hyman and criminal defense attorney Marie Pereira. What a treat for me to have both of you here on set. We just finished watching the direct examination, and the last part of this testimony about the autopsy was the cause of death. A lot of words to say something you summed up, but basically multiple blunt force injuries due to the pedestrian being hit by a vehicle. Marie, how would you describe that?
He got hit by a big truck, 7,000 pounds, like the prosecutor said during the opening. Bam! And that was it. And he suffered injuries, and that caused the death.
Let me ask you, Kelly, real quick. Intentional or not, I mean, we know that's what the prosecution has to prove. He's presumed innocent. They are saying it was murder. This was premeditated. This was intentional. Your thoughts?
Well, ultimately, that's going to be up to the jury. But when we look at this, we look at where exactly the injuries were. And I think that's definitely going to play a key part, because was this intentional? Did he take the car, the truck, and ram right into him? Or was this some type of accident where he allegedly was turning around and then the guy got hit? Now, in either one of those scenarios, potentially the damage that is done to the victim will be different. So ultimately, the jury's going to look at that, but I think that's going to play a key role in this case.
Really good point. The forensics make a difference in terms of the jury deciding that, I think. Now, Marie, you know, I had to come back to you and ask about, we never blame victims, and we are very good about not blaming victims, but there's a third person who is also a victim in this case. It's the estranged wife at the time, now divorced from the defendant, who was the girlfriend of the victim. Did she have any role in this scenario?
Sadly, I think she does, and I will call her Messy Meredith, because at the end of the day, she knew that her husband was crazy jealous. He had been stalking her the entire night. So she's sitting there with her boyfriend, and he's calling and calling. So she shows the boyfriend, who's also tipsy, 0.11, okay, the call. And she essentially sets up a play date at 1:30 in the morning between two drunk men, both of whom she's sleeping with, the other one who's devastated, and they're not even fully divorced yet. There's a divorce in process. And then she joins them together, 1:30 in the morning, two men who want her, who've had her, one who's crushed, and then they meet. What did she think was going to happen? I'm not blaming her because people have free will, but maybe in hindsight, don't link them, don't plan a play date for a discussion at 1:30 in the morning between one hurt and one very angry man.
And you know what victims always say after the fact is, I may have been scared, I may have been worried, but I never thought he or she, the defendant, would do that. I never thought he'd actually kill somebody by running over him with a truck.
You know, I want to take that back because she knew, because when she came and the nanny saw the body of the victim, she ran and she hid because she thought he was still around. Why are you hiding, and why did you automatically think it was him that did it? Because you know your man, you know he was mad, you should have never set that meeting up, and if they set it up themselves, you should have discouraged it.
Agree or disagree quickly before we go back to court, Kelly?
With all due respect, I disagree with your position. I think we have to look at ultimately how he was killed and who killed him, and that is the culprit in this matter.
All right, we're going to see what happens. Let's get back into court now. The medical examiner is still on the stand, but the defense is now going to cross-examine him. Let's go back in.
That Ms. McClinton suffered was a result of the automobile situation about being hit by a car, correct? I mean, no, you haven't seen anything to dispute that.
I have not.
And we haven't even raised that issue, have we?
Not to me.
As far as you know. But there were multiple injuries of blunt force trauma, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and you've seen, would you say, at least 50 pedestrian, or was it more than that?
It's probably more than that. It's probably in the neighborhood of 100, give or take, that I've personally done.
Okay. And injuries such as this are consistent with pedestrians who get struck by vehicles?
Correct.
Correct?
Yes.
It's most unfortunate, but that's what happens when somebody gets hit by a car.
Yes.
These multiple fractures and abrasions and the road rash and all the things you described, correct?
Yes, all those things can occur.
Okay. I believe the EMS, when they got there, there was no pattern, he appeared to be dead at that point when they got there. And are you aware of that? Have you been aware of that?
Yes, that's the best of my understanding. I did review that EMS report, although it's been a while.
Okay, so I mean, basically, it appears that he may have died instantly, correct?
Rapidly, I think would be a more accurate term. Yes.
Okay, and he would have been hit and not had consciousness at that point. Is that correct?
Likely, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me just ask you a couple of other questions, because I'd like to ask you some questions about the toxicology report. 0.118 is close to 0.12. Is that, I mean, pretty much from my second or third grade education.
Sure, if we round up.
So let me ask you this. You're aware of the fact that in South Carolina, if you're driving a vehicle with a 0.08, there's a presumption you're under the influence, correct?
That's my understanding of the legal definitions, although I don't...
No, I'm not asking you to opine about that, but that's what your understanding is.
Yes.
So this would have been over a 0.08, correct?
Correct.
And you understood that he was driving to where the accident happened?
It is my understanding that is how he arrived at that location originally.
Somebody with a 0.118, as the alcohol percentages increase in the body, and there's a change in behavior, correct? I mean, as far as pathology is concerned, you're aware of the fact that there's an increase in change in behavior.
In some people, yes. Every individual is different, so some people with a very small amount of alcohol will display changes or differences, whereas someone else with a much higher amount may not display those changes or differences.
Right, and there's really no way to know, but some of the factors that we do know that someone at a 0.118, there could be a change in behavior, correct?
In some individuals, yes.
Correct. So we're at that level. An individual with a 0.118 one of the signs of someone who, again, we don't know a particular individual, but one of them is losing judgment, correct? That's one of the things in pathology that we know.
Again, in general, just to be clear, my interpretation of toxicology, in other words, what I do for a living, part of my specialty, really focuses on death and how and when it affects the physiologic cause of death. And that depends on the individual case. But my interpretation is generally that the intoxication level or how an individual responds is widely variable. Depends on the individual case.
All right, and I'm not asking you to opine about it, but I'm just talking about general characteristics. Having looked at some pathology books, there are charts dealing with alcohol levels in the pathology books.
Yes, there are some statistical tables and charts that say, at or around this level, this can generally happen. But again, from an individual point of view, it varies.
Okay. So, but you would agree that as alcohol content increases in someone, some people have impaired judgment, correct?
Some people, sure.
Some people get aggressive, correct?
That may happen.
Some people really have resistance to pain as the alcohol level increases?
Again, it's highly variable.
Yeah,
sure.
and I'm not trying to pin you down. I'm just asking you you're an expert, a pathologist, and I haven't disputed that. But as the alcohol level increases, these factors become an issue, can become an issue.
Can.
Okay. And aggressiveness, correct, is another factor that can be you can show up, somebody can be aggressive as the alcohol level increases.
Some people who are actually intoxicated will be more aggressive, others less. It really depends on the individual.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. And I just wanted, from a pathology standpoint, and because having reviewed some pathology books, those charts are there, and I just wanted to see if you agree that as the alcohol level increases, some of these characteristics can be there.
Can,
correct?
sure.
Okay.
Sure.
And let me ask you, Adderall. Apparently, he had a prescription for Adderall, and Adderall sort of. Tell me what the effects of Adderall are, just from your standpoint in pathology.
Sure. Again, I don't treat people with ADD, so how that affects people in a prescription sense is different from what I'm looking at when I look at a case from a potential cause of death point of view. So those things are a little bit different. So if at low levels or at therapeutic levels, I probably would not be the best person to indicate what therapeutic levels might or might not do to an individual.
Okay. I mean, as a doctor, you would agree that someone who is taking Adderall, which is used for ADHD, should not be drinking, correct?
I can't speak to that.
Okay. Would you recommend someone drink if they're on Adderall?
I sustain.
Okay. All right. So do you aware of, in pathology, is there a synergistic effect between alcohol and something like Adderall?
I'm not aware of a classic synergistic effect as there can be with some other drugs and medications that are very, very similar types of medications. So I can't speak to that specifically.
And I don't know if this was the objection that you sustained, but do you know what the effect of what happens when someone's taking Adderall? Do you know?
Again, I can't speak to that.
Okay, that's fine. I didn't know if that was the objection or not.
Sustain.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. All right.
Very briefly.
Yes, sir.
Alcohol affects people different ways.
Most definitely.
Some happy.
Yes.
Some sad. Some angry.
I can't testify.
Yeah. All right. Rephrase, Mr. Matters, if you would.
Does alcohol affect people differently?
Yes.
Okay. In what way?
Well, again, different people respond in different ways. Some people go into party mode. Some people get depressed. Some people, it really depends on the individual. That's, again, based on cases that I've seen leading up to a death. That's the history that I get with it, as well as personal life experience. But yes, everyone acts and reacts differently, and sometimes it's consistent from episode to episode of drinking. Sometimes it varies. It just depends.
All right, Dr. Shaw, you can step down.
Thank you.
You are free to leave the courthouse. You're more than welcome to remain with us.
Speculating on things, giving his opinion where maybe he wouldn't have had there been an objection, but there wasn't, so that's the conclusion of his testimony. Stay with us. Coming up next, the state calls their final witness an investigator who responded to the crime scene on the night of that fatal crash. You don't want to miss this. We'll be right back.
One of my favorite supplements is Cunol Turmeric. Turmeric helps with healthy joints and inflammation support, and Cunol has the #1 doctor-recommended form of turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Give me something new. I want the real you. That is the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes, of course we can get you more.
Rex, go!
Angus MacGyver.
You know that was fun.
Just give me more.
Why is America paying attention to the race? Because what takes place on both sides of the aisle here can be seen on both sides of these aisles.
The Race, weeknights at 6 on Scripps News. Watch with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
You go get him, Tiger. Oh, yeah.
Did a hog farmer kill his wife with a pitchfork? Todd Mullis claims her death was an accident. But prosecutors say his internet search history tells a different story.
The Corn Rake Murder Trial, weekdays 4 to 8 on Court TV Legendary Trials.
His identity, a mystery.
Who is he?
His sword, lightning fast.
I challenge you!
His name,
Zorro! Zorro!
Zorro. Tuesdays starting 5/4 Central on Grid Extra.
Why is America paying attention to the race?
Because what happens in this town happens to your town too.
Here on the steps of the U.S. Capitol after a
The
historic...
decisions made in this house are felt in the heart of yours.
Every night on the race, we take you to the people, the policies, and the political points of impact.
We want to add some context around it tonight.
The Race, weeknights at 6/5 Central on Scripps News. Watch with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
Welcome to the Race Weekend. I'm Joe St. George. It's time for our Inside the Race panel with our partners from Politico. There is a lot to talk about.
It's about reaching the voters.
This is so crucial.
There are a lot of people out there who are still undecided.
These are important issues that are resonating.
You can't just win, you gotta win big.
Any given day, anything can change.
Elections are about the future.
We're coming to you from the Scripps News studios in Washington, D.C.
The Race Weekend, Saturday at 9 a.m., 8 Central on Scripps News.
Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on.
Yes, showtime.
You're gonna want to see this.
It's on.
Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery. It's on.
I'm a judge. I loved being on the bench. I want viewers to see that, to know what it's like to love being in a courtroom and to love watching what happens in a courtroom.
This is a case where I think you can believe either side based on the evidence being presented.
Here at Court TV, we can show you everything. And I hope at the end of the day, they've learned a little something about what it takes to try a case and why it's so important that it's done well.
1, 2, 3, Bulldogs! I am proud to be able to be on the first ever HBCU gymnastics team. This is how we'll do it! To be able to show off my talents at a HBCU is very honoring.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott. Thank you so much for being with us. We will get you back to court in just a moment. But first, an update out of Ohio for our other live trial, the medical assistant murder trial. Defendant Quentin Nixon, who is representing himself, is accused of gunning down 34-year-old Tony Westover at a house party. But Nixon says he fired in self-defense after a fight broke out. Here's the update. The state has now arrested their case in chief. That happened earlier today, but not before the court heard a recorded interview with Nixon where he told police he was in fear for his life.
It seems like everybody was trying to get that gun out of your hand, and you panicked.
He was everybody.
You said Brian, Adam, and the girl was...
They didn't start trying to do that until after I shot.
Okay. So they didn't try to get the gun from you until after you shot?
It was weird.
No, it makes sense. Because if someone had a gun and then they shot, that would normally be when someone would try to wrestle a gun away from someone.
He had Adam right here with his gun training me.
Yeah.
Then he moved over there and grabbed some printer and started printing out. I was wrong. I was wrong. I was in fear for my life.
I was in fear for my life. You just heard him say it. Court ended early for the day there due to scheduling issues and will reconvene next week for the start of the defense's case in chief, where we do expect the defendant, Quentin Nexon, to testify. Now let's go back to South Carolina versus William Bud Ackerman. Prosecutors say that Ackerman drove his pickup truck and his wife's new boyfriend, killing him in May of last year. The defense claims it was an accident fueled by the victim's desire to fight the defendant. On the stand right now is the state's final witness. This is Captain Mike Murdoch. Testimony just beginning, direct examination by the state.
All of the data,
okay.
so I don't have firsthand knowledge of all of that.
That's fine. Can we prepared a map, just a map of the area. This will aid your testimony. And I think this is states 58 without objection.
I don't have any objection to it.
Sir?
I have no objection.
Okay. All right, 58 into evidence for the state.
Somebody's going to tell us the best place to put this, Judge. I think we're...
We do have a little stand of some sort. Where would it be?
I apologize.
That's all right.
Is that a Google overhead?
Yes.
He's going to get it into you.
You want to come over here where you can see?
There you go. You'll need to step down for this, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Captain, you have to keep your voice up, as I know you will. You mind coming down, Captain? Now, Captain, you recognize this as an aerial photo of some of the locations we've talked about?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you, and I've got these stickers we're trying to get read, can you point out Key West on here?
Key West Club is going to be right around in here.
And you then testified that he then went to Tally Ho?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us where Tally Ho is?
Just a couple of them. Tally Ho will be in this area.
And then where did the defendant go after that?
Then he went to, based on the investigation of what I have learned, it went to Lakeshore Drive, which is the residence of Davis McClendon, lived on Lakeshore Drive.
Okay, and that's been testified previously. Davis McClendon lived on Lakeshore Drive?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where did the defendant go after that?
He went from there, can't give me a red. Then he went Lakeshore Drive is here. You basically cross over 72, 221 to break on the lake.
Now, you're familiar with Break on the Lake?
Yes, sir.
And I think we had a Patrick Hinderling who put the video in of Break on the Lake.
I wasn't present for the testimony, but I believe there was one, yes, sir.
Okay, and you are aware of the video from Break on the Lake, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm aware there is a video from there.
We need to squeeze in another break. Just a reminder, this is the last state's witness, so the jury will have all the evidence from the state, but then that defense will have an opportunity to present any evidence if they choose to. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
When they couldn't sufficiently scare him, they killed him.
A young jogger chased and gunned down in South Georgia.
Ahmaud Arbery was hunted down.
Once that video got released to the public, everything changed.
They made their decision to attack Ahmaud Arbery in their driveways.
Should we been chasing him? I don't know.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rollins. All news Sunday night, 8/7 Central.
Only on Court TV.
Skating for over 45 years has taken a toll on my body. I take Cunol Turmeric because it helps with healthy joints and inflammation support. Why Cunol? It has superior absorption compared to regular turmeric. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Why is America paying attention to the race? Because what takes place on both sides of the aisle here can be seen on both sides of these aisles.
The Race, weeknights at 6 on Scripps News. Watch with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
1, 2, 3, I am proud to be able to be on the first ever HBCU gymnastics team. This is how we'll do it! To be able to show off my talents at a HBCU is very honoring.
Did a hog farmer kill his wife with a pitchfork? Todd Mullis claims her death was an accident. But prosecutors say his internet search history tells a different story.
The Corn Rake Murder Trial, weekdays 4 to 8 on Court TV Legendary Trials.
Saturday night. First you moved in, you banned cigar smoke and kitchen nudity. Oscar Madison.
Just doing my daily yoga.
Felix Unger.
You're not exactly a guy's guy.
Why? Because I use coasters? I'm an accomplished photographer. Perfect, let's start shooting. And I can make a pair of tap shoes talk. What do you say, boys?
Together, they're the odd couple.
Here, hold that. Oscar, is that coffee? I just cleaned the rug. Better not move.
The Odd Couple, Saturday starting 7/6 Central on Laugh More.
You got us banned from being room parents? I have never been more in love with you.
Who wants to go nuts for donuts?
Show them your folding trick.
I'm not in the mood for your sheet right now.
That's gotta hurt, huh? You keep me coming back for more.
Bounce elevates and celebrates the achievements of HBCUs all year long.
From the classroom to the field, we are making history.
Bounce HBCU Yearbook.
You go get him, Tiger.
Oh, yeah.
Give me something new. I want the real you. That is the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes, of course we can get you more.
Rex, go!
Angus MacGyver.
You know that was fun.
Just give me more.
His identity, a mystery.
Who is he?
His sword, lightning fast.
I challenge you!
His name,
Zorro! Zorro!
Zorro. Tuesday starting 5/4 Central on Grid Extra.
right, let's head back to South Carolina now, where the case against Bud Ackerman is winding down. We are getting close to hearing whether jurors believe he intentionally drove his truck into his estranged wife's new boyfriend, or if they side with the defense, who says it was an accident. Right now, the jury is hearing from Captain Mike Murdoch with the Greenville Police Department. He's laying out some of the key locations noted in his investigation.
Is this the parking lot at the outside of Break on the Lake?
Yes, sir, it appears to be.
Would you dispute at the top it says 0037?
No, sir, I wouldn't dispute it.
Whose truck is that?
Bud Ackerman's.
What directions does the car appear to turn?
Appeared to turn, I have to play it back. Appeared to turn left going towards the bridge.
And based on your investigation, when it turned left to go to the bridge, where did it go?
Across the bridge to the Port Grill, what used to be the dock years ago in the Lawrence County.
Can you put a sticker there?
Yes, sir.
Used to be. What did it used to be?
Used to be the dock years ago. I don't know when it changed hands or why, but.
And based on your investigation of the infotainment center in the F-250 truck, where did it go next?
But on my information provided to me, it left there and came back over to right here to where his residence is on Old Abbeville Highway.
Okay. And did he pass his residence or did he go in his residence?
If I'm not mistaken on the information provided to me, this Rivers Run's come out, he passed it and then backed up.
And where did he go after that?
Then he eventually winds up down here at Abbott and Sawgrass.
Did he go on Abbott and Sawgrass once or twice?
I think.
That's not leading. I'm asking what.
No, it's not the leading. It's the source of the information.
I'm sorry, Judge. I didn't mean to respond.
I mean, my problem is that is he being accurate about it? That's my problem.
I think the travel of the defendant is already into evidence through the video of yesterday, whatever the amount of time it was. So that's already into evidence. So I don't see a problem with Mr. Meadows asking Captain Murdoch these questions.
And I understand it's in evidence, but it's just the interpretation. That's what I'm concerned about, because I'm not sure that Captain Murdoch really knows this information. That's my problem.
Well, if he's familiar with the evidence that has been put in the record, then I'm going to allow him to.
Yes, sir.
Okay. May proceed.
It goes down in there. To be specific, I don't know how many times and what but I know that he eventually ends at Evans Sawgrass.
Okay. And his parents' house is where?
His parents' house is right here.
Okay. And Abbott and Sawgrass is where?
It's right here, kind of under this right here.
You want to put the sticker there?
Oh, yeah, we're going through the ridge.
And if approximately, if you know, it was in the evidence, do you know how many miles this is?
No, sir.
Okay. Then you can have a seat back. Thank you. Now, Captain, who decided to call in MATE, the the Highway Patrol folks?
I did. I made that decision.
Okay. And why?
Still with us, attorneys Kelly Hyman, Marie Pereira. I'm smiling because we were all leaning in as we're watching everything on this, ladies, and all the video. He drove through that parking lot. Let me start with you, Kelly, beforehand. Does that mean premeditation to you?
Intent. So what was his intent? So the fact that he allegedly drove around the place before the meeting, why did he do that? What was on his mind? Was he planning something? Did he want to see what the scene was like? It shows a very strong case for the state.
And I think there's been evidence, Marie, for me to think, well, he definitely, in this particular case with this woman, was doing some things that I would consider stalking, probably harassing. Does that rise to the level of murder in your mind so far with the evidence the state's presented?
It doesn't rise to the level of murder, but it creates a motive. A motive, you know, we don't have to prove as prosecutors, but the jurors want to know what had happened.
Yep.
And I'm going to say it again. Even though Kelly gets upset, it was Messi Meredith.
That's behind the scenes.
That was the catalyst behind this entire thing.
Yeah.
And was him going to, you know, drive around that parking lot show intent? I agree with Kelly on that point. But as far as him being there in the first place, who arranged it? Messi Meredith.
Maybe Meredith had tried, right? And was fed up and done and didn't know what else to do and thought, all right, fine, let's try it. Go talk to him. See if you can reason with him because he's harassing me. He's stalking me. He's driving me crazy. I'm fearful of him. I just need him to go away. Go try it. I don't think that means, Kelly, necessarily she thought, oh, it's going to result in death.
People need to be accountable for their actions. And now the defendant is innocent until proven guilty. But if in fact he is guilty, then there is accountability.
All right, we're out of time. Thank you to Kelly Hyman for joining us. Marie sticking around. Up next, Michael Ayala. We're going to bring you more testimony in the jealous husband murder trial for Bud Ackerman. Stay tuned.
Ion is on with 3 networks to enjoy.
Yeah, it's on. Yes.
Showtime.
You're gonna want to see this.
It's on. Ion, Ion Plus, and Ion Mystery. It's on.
Did a hog farmer kill his wife with a pitchfork? Todd Mullis claims her death was an accident. But prosecutors say his internet search history tells a different story.
The Corn Rake Murder Trial, weekdays 4 to 8 on Court TV Legendary Trials.
I didn't hear anybody knock. Shall we proceed?
My pa's the best shot in the whole world. Isn't it exciting?
They call you the rifleman. Just make it good.
1, 2, 3, Bulldogs! I am proud to be able to be on the first ever HBCU gymnastics team. This is how we'll do it! To be able to show off my talents at a HBCU is very honoring.
I'm Marisa Giorgio, live from our studio in Missoula, Montana, and this is America Tonight.
Scripps News takes you ahead of the headlines.
We're reading between the lines there.
America Tonight on Scripps News. Find with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
Welcome to the race weekend. I'm Joe St. George. It's time for our Inside the Race panel with our partners from Politico. There's a lot to talk about.
It's about reaching the voters.
This is so crucial.
There are a lot of people out there who are still undecided.
These are important issues that are resonating.
You can't just win, you got to win big.
Any given day, anything can change.
Elections are about the future.
We're coming to you from the Scripps News studios in Washington, D.C.
The Race Weekend, Saturday at 9 a.m., 8 Central on Scripps News.
Why is America paying attention to the race? Because what takes place on both sides of the aisle here can be seen on both sides of these aisles.
The Race, weeknights at 6 on Scripps News. Watch with an antenna or on your favorite streaming app.
His identity, a mystery.
Who is he?
His sword, lightning fast.
I challenge you!
His name,
Zorro! Zorro!
Zorro. Tuesdays starting 5/4 Central on Grid Extra.
Celebrity trials are like no other. You not only have the drama of what's happening inside of the courtroom, there's the drama of who these people are. Paparazzi everywhere, people just hoping to get a glimpse. It's something that we haven't seen anything quite like.
A strong showing for the case against Robert Kelly.
There's this balance between the pizzazz of celebrity and the seriousness of a trial in a courtroom, and Court TV gets to bring you all of it.
There's gonna be trouble.
Are you silver? Let's have it!
Scared? You the law?
Well, that's right.
I'll find you, and I'll kill you.
Now all I need is a fresh horse, a saddle, and a gun.
Give me something new. I want the real you. That is the best idea I've ever heard.
Yes, of course we can get you more.
Rex, go!
Angus MacGyver.
You know that was fun.
Just give me more.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Ashley Wilcott.
And I'm Michael Ayala. We're both here today giving you your front row seat to justice, and we are in several courtrooms across the country this afternoon here on Court TV.
In South Carolina first, defendant William Bud Ackerman is accused of fatally striking Kenneth Davis McClendon with his car in the early morning hours of May 7th of 2023.
McClendon had recently begun dating Ackerman's soon-to-be ex-wife, and the two men had agreed to meet up and talk when McClendon was struck.
And in Florida, our newest live trial kicked off today with opening statements in the home renovation murder trial.
Corey Binderim is accused of killing his client after she threatened to sue him for not completing a bathroom project. We'll bring you updates from that trial throughout the day.
But for now, let's head back to South Carolina, where the state's final witness is testifying on direct examination. This is Captain Mike Murdoch, and he investigated this. He's been showing us video of the path of the truck that the defendant was in. Let's go back in.
There that may had advanced training and reconstruction or mapping, and I knew they had the ability to download what I call the black box. So that's why I called them in, because I knew if they were able to do the mapping, it would be able to provide you with a visual representation like I think you saw yesterday of the scene.
Of course, just a few more questions. You're fine. You're fine. Cat, will you come down here, please? Of course.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Yep, no problem.
Thank you, everybody's indulgence. Thank you. We're almost there.
Sure, no problem.
Captain,
Yes, sir.
did y'all find Davis McClendon's wallet on him after he was killed?
No, sir.
What time's on the screen? 9:43:33?
Yes, sir.
You can have a seat back, Captain. Now, Captain, you early on in our testimony, you said you talked to Mr. Cummings.
Yes, sir.
Was the crash depicted on Mr. Cummings' video?
Yes, sir. In the top right-hand corner, you can catch a glimpse of the crash.
And you said Mr. Maceda is this? You also got the video from the ring camera from Mr. Maceda, is that correct?
Yes, sir. It was during the investigation it was obtained.
You born and raised here?
Yes, sir.
And this states 58 you've told the ladies and gentlemen about. You traveled these roads a lot?
Not a lot, but I've been down some of them.
You've been on the road some, Captain?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are some of these roads two-lane roads?
Yes, sir.
And at night, when you're driving and late at night, early morning hours, you got your headlights on?
Yes, sir.
And on these two-lane roads are mailboxes out in front of some of the houses?
Yes, sir.
Stop signs some at intersections?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Carson.
Sure.
Hills?
Yes, sir.
You can sit back. I think I'm not.
Mr. Meadows, if you have some, a good bit more direct.
I think I can finish. Well,
I don't want to rush you. I'm just thinking maybe kind of stop right here, take a lunch break, and we can pick back up. And I don't want to rush you, nor do I want to rush Mr. Swirling.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a break.
All right, after that lunch break, the defense declined to cross-examine the witness. They had no questions, and then after that, the state rested its case. Now let's bring in criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor, still with us this hour, Marie Pereira. Marie, thank you for staying on with both of us. And that Ring video, the part that I noted, you could hear that crash. You could hear that truck run in, and now we know it was a person that truck ran into. That's hard to listen to and not say, boy, he needs to be responsible for that.
It is very difficult. It's very strong demonstrative evidence. You can hear it. Like they said when they did the opening, you hear the bam. And I don't know, but I even heard like a voice, like a squealing. And it's really very impactful, and it helps prosecution in this case.
Yeah. I agree.
I can't tell you, though, I thought, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, thought I heard a tire screech.
Maybe that's what I thought was the...
I thought I heard a tire screech,
Okay.
and I know the screech you're talking about.
Yes.
To me, it sounded like a tire screech.
As if he was like, uh-oh, and slammed on his
Right,
brakes.
and so that's my point, Marie. What do you make of that? Let's just assume that it was a tire screech. What is that telling us, right? His story is that he had to swerve to get out of the way, maybe even hit the brakes, although I believe the truck didn't register the brakes being hit. But at the end of the day, that screech suggests maybe there was some attempt to get out of the way. I don't know.
Hopefully for defense, they will interpret it as a tire screech and not the scream of somebody who was hit by a 7,000-pound vehicle. I think you're right, Michael. Maybe it is a tire screech, but then they had experts who came in to explain that there was no evidence that the car tried to brake or stop. That truck did not try to swerve. The tire marks didn't support someone trying to avoid another person.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, because I know what the defense is going to do is bring in their own accident reconstructionist, which may have a different, obviously will have a different opinion, because I think you could try to swerve out of the way and not leave any tire marks or anything along that line. Although if that screech was tires, you would think the screech would leave some mark. I don't know.
It's kind of hard to know, but you're right. It is going to be the battle of the experts, because of course the defense is going to bring one in, and that's coming up next. We know coming up next, the defense does call their first witness, and Michael, you called it, an accident reconstructionist. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, new developments in the murder of Anna Walsh. We're taking a closer look at how Trooper Proctor from the Karen Reed case could play a role in the case against Brian Walsh.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
Sarah Boone is charged with second-degree murder after her boyfriend suffocated inside of a suitcase.
Sarah, I can't breathe. I thought he was okay.
The Suitcase Murder Trial. Live coverage starting Monday morning, 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Did a hog farmer kill his wife with a pitchfork? Todd Mullis claims her death was an accident. But prosecutors say his internet search history tells a different story.